from the beginning.
And I was shown that that Lucifer would return, that the UN and the Vatican were going to be completely behind it, again, under false pretenses. He's going to show up and say, I'm here to save the day, right? And, okay, fine, you know.
Yeah, of course,
ahead,
you can say whatever you want.
But
I've always hated censorship. It's the internet.
Sometimes, you know, once they get you for your first love bite, well, it depends on how aware you are, right?
I forgot my bullets. I never had a gun. Here I am left standing. Am I the only one? For what I see, memories have gifted me. I'll never see the sun.
First of all, as you know, the Anunnaki and the Draco are enemies. Second of all, underneath Baghdad was a stargate that was created by the Anunnaki so that they could transfer from Jupiter to the Earth.
I'll never see the sun. I could just end it all, but the demons will have won.
Magical practitioners that, you know, some are good and some use their magic for good and to heal and to help, and others do use it for evil. And, you know, in some cases, you know, people really were.
This is too much sometimes. From the broken ruins of Babylon, this is End of Days Radio. And I am your host, Daniel, broadcasting all the way to you from the shimmering Emerald City, right here in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. Today's date is August 1st, 2018. And I am very happy to be here. Let me tell you guys, I'm very happy to be here. I'm always happy to be here. But tonight is a very special night because we're going to be talking to a very special individual named Alexandros Filth. Alexandros is a simple country boy with an unquenchable thirst and hunger for wisdom and knowledge. His curiosity is as boundless as imagination incarnate. As an INFJ, he deeply cares about others and wishes to use his gifts to help the world in any and all ways, while maintaining his anonymity, as fame and fortune will only impede his efforts. Interesting. Why don't we go ahead and give him a call?
Hey!
Hello.
Good to be on.
Alexandros, is this you?
How do I turn the speaker on? Boop. There we go. Much better.
Alexandros, hello.
Yes. Hello. Good to be with you.
Very good to be with you, sir. I did introduce you just now, but I am so excited to get to know you. Would you like to start off by telling my audience out there a little bit about yourself?
I would say that I'm a pretty introverted person. If you were going to grade me on a scale, I would be considered an INFJ. I'm not normally the person that's very outgoing. My hands are actually sweaty right now, having this conversation, and I'm not in front of anybody, you know. I don't like to be dissected. I'm not here to be on display for anybody else. But I realized at some point that things were not going to get better if I didn't take a more active role, and I would be somewhat responsible, for any kind of calamity that happened if I had the ability to do something and change something and didn't speak out.
Excellent. Actually, can you explain to us? I mean, I sort of know what this is because I looked it up, but what is an INFJ?
Yeah, so there is a regulatory system that explains human behavior heuristics. You could think of it like a way to rate human beings on an emotional response scale. Hold on, let me actually look up the real term for this because it was a group of people that actually came up with this. And it's kind of like at the end of high school when you take one of those job rating tests and you answer all these questionnaire and it says, okay, you're going to make a great lumberjack one day, right? INFJ, literally, each letter stands for something, is introversion, intuition, feeling, judging. It's an initialism used in the publications of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI for short. And Myers-Briggs were a couple of researchers that were very, very, very intelligent, and they didn't like the way that Freud described the heuristics of human behavior and emotional response. And they didn't really agree 100% with the contested ideology of not Freud, but his protege, Jung. And so they said, well, wait a minute, maybe there's another way to look at this. Because really this personality test is a self-organization or a self-evaluation system. And that's exactly what Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is. So it refers to one of 16 personality types. The MBTI assessment was developed from work of the prominent psychiatrist Carl Jung in his book, Ecological Types. So they did take some information from Jung and obviously from Freud as well. But he proposed a psychological topology based on the theories of cognitive functions. See, each of us, when we're born, the base software that we're born with to absorb information and what makes us our personality, our behavior characteristics, is kind of different from person to person. And I kind of won the lottery because INFJ is like one of the rarest types. And I think that a lot of, if you look at the personality types of the leader, like Alexander the Great, or people like Tesla, or some of the very unique people, typically had an INFJ type personality as their base personality. Or, Tesla's a really great example because he also grew up in the country. Anybody who is a naturalist, another great example, Goddard, the Rocketeer. He wanted to be alone so badly that he's like, I want to get off the planet. And so, what did he do? He designed rockets so that he could leave. And that's kind of the same ideology that I share. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. But you asked about INFJ. Sorry, go ahead.
This is very interesting. I do think it's very interesting that people could be classified or their personalities. It makes me wonder where I would fit in that spectrum. I wonder if I would be an INFJ or possibly a different type. Do you feel that this has helped you in truth seeking and exploring things that are conspiratorial?
Yeah, this is actually one of the most important things that people can do. Here's the problem with truth seeking, though, and so this is why we have to be careful in this broadcast, because people are going to be listening to this, and it can influence / brainwash them if you think about it like that. Okay, and that's not my goal here, but I will talk about it a little bit. I believe personally, firstly and foremost, that the truth movement is a very personal experience. You can't tell somebody what truth is. That's something that they're going to have to seek for themselves. And the answers aren't going to come from an external source, although the evidence that you use to form truth will certainly come from your sense perception. The things that you read, what you put into your spirit, your spirit cavity, your personality, all the things that you absorb and you make as part of you. That is really what the Myers-Briggs type indicator is designed to sort of bring out. So let me just go a little bit into this, because you can do this yourself, and people that are listening to this can kind of use this as a guide to seek the self, because you can't change the world. That is an indisputable truth about the universe. You can't make anybody else do something that they don't want to do, and you cannot keep someone else from seeking what they want to seek, right? This is the nature of truth. This isn't the truth itself, but it's the nature of truth as it is defined with our unfortunate syntax. So it's an introspective self-report questionnaire with the purpose of indicating differing psychological preferences in how people perceive, right, how we receive the information of the world around them and make decisions. In other words, how we change our own behavior about how we see ourselves in reference to the rest of the world, right? So the MBTI was constructed by Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers. It's based on the conceptual theory proposed by Carl Jung. Let's see, concepts, precepts and ethics. Here we go. A type, not a trait. So the MBTI sorts for type, right? We don't indicate the strength of ability because everyone's ability is that's a truth that people have to seek for themselves. And I'm gonna kind of end this description here because I really want people to read into this for themselves and kind of discover this on their own without going too far into it. Because if it's like I said, the truth is a sacred pathway. It's something that we have to do on our own. And it's really what's missing, honestly, in the world among all the adults and even children today. If you look at the difference between the tribal people that were very successful and didn't have the social problems we have today and what humankind has actually evolved into, we are missing this this spirit journey. What do you want to call it? A coming of age. You know, where each person kind of goes off on their own and says, I have to seek my own path. The German Baptists, incidentally, have a term for this. They call this Rumspringen. So if you know any Mennonites, they have something very similar. And basically it's, hey, there's the world's way. There's everything else that everybody else is doing. And then there is a more disciplined way of living life. There's a different way of doing things. And everyone has to decide this for themselves. But the only way to do that is to seek. And so that self-seeking is not like a selfish thing, like I want to be a serial killer kind of thing, like the Cabal would have us believe, and really what they're trying to kind of paint us in the corner to do. That's their truth, right? That's their disclosure. That's the reason why I'm going to end the conversation about that specifically here, because I'm not here to say this is the way that you are supposed to live. In fact, I believe in freedom and liberty, and I joined the United States Marine Corps to make sure that I can protect that right and freedom for every person on the planet.
Marine Corps, you're a Marine?
Yes. Well, I guess you could say I still am. Yeah, once a Marine, always a Marine. Absolutely.
Yeah, I am familiar with that motto. Yeah, since you were a Marine, you're still a Marine.
I'll tell you, 13 weeks of boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina is a transformative experience. It's one of the reasons why I believe the things that I do in the way that I do, having been subjected to, I wouldn't call it Kabbalistic. But having been subjected to a kind of brainwashing and forming of the youthful mind, in the same way that the Spartans were formed at a very young age, that it goes back to what I was speaking about earlier.
Interesting.
About that coming of age.
Very interesting. So you're comparing the boot camp, the rigors that you have to go through to become a Marine with the rigors of becoming a Spartan warrior.
Well, really, it's still the act of survival. Each of us is expected, and we expect of ourselves. We know at some point the truth that comes to us. At some point, we realize that we're decaying, that we're dying. So what do we do with the time that we have left? And that's really what this is about. We're going to dance around this whole conversation. It's going to be great.
Did you have?
And that's a warrior type mentality. That's a leadership type mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's that movie Full Metal Jacket where the boot camp situation gets so intense, one guy actually snaps and ends up shooting the drill sergeant.
Yeah, and so that's an indication of, you could say that Hollywood was kind of putting in a little innuendo there and saying how that system can be perverted and how it can actually turn people into monsters, right?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like, well, one story that comes to mind was the, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Abu Ghraib prison scandal in Iraq, where the people that were monitoring the captive Arabs, they were abusing them and raping them and killing them, and all kinds of horrible things were going on.
Yeah. Well, and it comes down, even that specifically comes down to leadership and responsibility. And that's a top-down issue. What you're seeing there is exactly what I witnessed while I was in the United States Marine Corps in the military, which we can talk about a little bit. And it's a leadership problem from the top down. What you're actually seeing, believe it or not, with that is not a fault of the military members themselves. What you saw there was an indication of a much bigger disease. You're seeing the symptoms of a sickness. It's like you see that someone is coughing and sneezing, and you say, oh, well, that person has a cold, right? What you are seeing with that abuse in the prison is that the military members themselves believe that this behavior is okay because they've seen it happen at higher levels, and that complacency was there, and it wasn't nipped in the bud. That is a very big indicator of exactly what's going on in the sickness and the disease that is happening at the higher echelons of our government. That's like an indicator of the deep state and the cabal itself and the embedment in our military and our military values. And so when you see that, as a military member, you're like, wait a minute, I heard all these things and we're supposed to be this good organization. Why is this happening? And why am I being complacent in this and no one's questioning it? Or if you do, it's a no-no.
Yeah, one thing that is big, obviously, in the military is following orders. If you don't follow orders, it's considered insubordination, or you could even be labeled a traitor or even executed.
That's right. Well, the other important thing to remember is, too, that when you join the military, you are not working for the President of the United States. Your job is not to serve the President of the United States. It's not to support duly elected members of Congress. In fact, the first thing that you do before you join the military is you swear an oath, which, I took a point to memorize. I'll say I state my name. Do so solemnly swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and do bear true faith and allegiance to the same. So help me, whatever I believe in. In my case, it would be God or the Creator, progenitor, or, the designer. And why that's important is we are not swearing allegiance to a flag. We're not swearing allegiance to a nation. We're swearing allegiance to a set of ideals and morals that is above a law. Laws are created to support ideals and morals of a given peoples. And so by swearing an allegiance to this ideology, what we're saying is that even if there is a law that comes into effect that hurts the people, if there is a principle that is set that is endangering the people's freedom and liberty, that as a patriot, we are required to stand against that. And that includes activity in the military that we don't agree with, that does not sign with that moral code.
Did you witness anything really disturbing?
I'll tell you, the thing that I witnessed that was disturbing the most was seeing the duality in the leadership in the military specifically, where the leaders can do what they want and you're not allowed to question it. And there is this dark behind closed doors, do as I say, not as I do, kind of attitude that you can see reflected on up the chain all the way to the highest levels of organization. I won't go too deep into it, but let me just say that the things that go on in Thailand in terms of like human trafficking and the involvement in the sex trade, that you can see that reflected in the mentality and the morals of the leadership all the way from the top. And I'm talking about 4-star generals on down. And that is something that is not really talked about. It's kind of like the whole Hollywood scandal. But because the general is doing it, it's okay for everybody else. But then here's the thing. If you're this lower level, you're this low-hanging fruit level, it's like we're going to make an example out of you to keep everybody else in line. And so that you'll see that too. And that kind of alarmed me because it was like everybody saw what was happening, but nobody was raising the alarm and saying, wait a minute, something's wrong. And that was one of the reasons why I ended up getting out, was because I spoke out enough, and they said, well, we can't have him around. We can't have him, talking about this stuff because it's going to expose some things, and it's going to put some people out that are very powerful and well known, and we can't allow that to happen.
Oh wow! So you actually, you actually had some conversations, or you spoke out in some way that caught the attention of the higher ups?
Well, let's say that I got involved because they tried to drop the hammer on somebody, and they tried to use the system against someone who was actually innocent. And they were doing it in a very, very dirty way, and I won't stand for such a thing. And, I wasn't a sellout. They asked me basically to go on the stand against somebody and say things about people, not just people, but against another human being, and say that this person has done something. It's going to be on their record for forever. It's going to follow them for the rest of their life. And I was like, I'm not going to convict them. No, I'm not going to be a part of a hung jury. And when they realized that I wouldn't sell out, that I wouldn't be part of that good old boys club, there's the term I was looking for, the good old boys club, that they were like, well, we've got to get rid of him too. And that's exactly what happened. And that my PTSD is not from what you might expect. Because, going to Afghanistan and seeing the things that I saw, yeah, that's one thing. But I expected that. What I didn't expect was when I swore an oath and I had a brotherhood and, I was there and I gave my trust to these people, but then that wasn't reciprocated. And I had to watch my back from people that were supposed to be able to make this moral distinction, and they were supposed to be part of something good. And here they were against this moral code, basically turning their backs on me. Not just that, but basically threatening me in the same kind of way. I felt threatened. I was like, well, I'm not even going to be able to sleep around these guys because they might actually kill me because they're afraid that I'm gonna call them out on their bullshit. And that's where my PTSD is from, and that's what's, I think, the most frightening thing about what the Cabal is and what how it's operating is because they're painting us in a corner, and the majority of people are clueless. They don't realize that these people have this stuff well planned out, well in advance, and they've thought this through so well that they've got everybody sold out to the same tune.
Yeah, that is pretty scary. It sounds like. Boy, it sounds like you may have felt like your life was in danger.
Oh, absolutely, without question. I mean, I think that was the biggest thing about Afghanistan was I wasn't worried about the Taliban. Of course, they did go out and seek to get on base, and but generally speaking, I knew that the military presence, and because of our training and equipment and so on, we were going to be protected. Like if mortar fire came in, we were in protected bunkers and we knew what to do. But I'll tell you what you can't fight against is knowing that the people that are supposed to protect you, that have sworn to be your brother and be there, that if you can't count on them to not murder you in your sleep because they're worried that you're going to snitch on them for something that they did wrong, that and they're opposed to you ethically and morally, and they're not supposed to be. That lack of trust, even though you give that trust, that is really a scary thing. To know that you could be assassinated by people that you're supposed to be able to trust.
Yeah, come to think of it, there was a story a number of years ago. There was a unit that was chopping off ears and noses, and I think the captain or whoever was in charge of that unit, he was encouraging it, and a couple guys wanted to speak out, and I think they were threatening them. They may have actually killed a couple of people that kind of shut them up.
Yeah, that was during Vietnam. Yeah, that happened during Vietnam. That's a real thing. And then that's actually been repeated. It's not something that they publicize a lot in the military. They don't want people to know these kinds of secrets. They can come after me if they want, but the truth is that it actually happens more often than is publicized. A lot of it is around gang and drug related activity that has embedded itself in the military. Once again, because of that corrupted upper level leadership, they have a similar thing going on. And so, what monkey see, monkey do. If they know that the generals and stuff are doing it. We're not stupid, it's just like our kids. They watch everything that we do and they see what's going on behind closed doors. They know what mommy and daddy are doing, and it's the same thing in the military. I'll give a great example. There was a theft ring that was going on in Japan, and it involved 4 individuals. One of them was a young lady, and 3 of them were gentlemen. And what happened was they had figured out their little scheme to steal, and they stole tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff from the base exchanges, which is like a Walmart on base. And they figured out a way to beat the system and not get caught. And there was a drug investigation going on at the exact same time. And in the process of NCIS trying to seek out the people that were involved in the drug ring, and smuggling drugs on base because they were running their own little mafia, they ran into a situation where they bumped into one of these rooms that had all this merchandise in it. And they're like, wait a minute, this person with this rank, there's no way they can afford all this merchandise. What's going on? So they started to ask some questions, and the other three thought that he was going to squeal on them. So they got him liquored up at the local watering hole, which is an enlisted club on base. It's like going to a bar. And they questioned him, and they couldn't figure out, because they got him too drunk, if he had sold them out or not. And so the young woman suggested that they murder him. And so one of them went and got a saw, and they cut his head off while he was still alive.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the other two were convicted of murder, and the female got away scot-free because she made a plea deal, and she was the one who encouraged them. And the reason why I know this is not only because it was in the base paper and there was a little blurb about it. I mean, they barely talked about it. And then, of course, NCIS likes to keep this stuff wrapped up tight because that's an international incident. That happened in Okinawa, Japan. And this is what I'm talking about. This is way worse. If you ever think the government is covering stuff up in the news, trust me, it's way worse than you think, because this is just the military, right? And whatever you see in the military is going to be reflected. It's going to be 10 times worse in the government. So this is at the enlisted level, by the way. This is the low levels. This is, all these guys were under enlisted level 4, which is like, being like a manager or a vice president, or like an assistant vice president in a company.
Oh, that's like an
E4? These guys ended up in the brig, and they were a flight risk. They couldn't leave and go back to the States and even see their family because they were worried, because they were so organized in this group that they were afraid that they had connections on the outside that would help them escape. And so they're what's called a flight risk. They wouldn't let them leave that brig, and they're there for life. They are never going to leave that brig. It's a life sentence for them. They murdered someone. And, what actually happened was, and I talked to them, they said, look, this chick sold us out. She set us up, and she basically made us murder our friend, who he didn't ever squeal on us, and she basically got away with the plea because she knew what she was doing. And it was dirty. And I was like, and that's not an isolated incident. Females, believe it or not, because it's opportunistic, especially in the military, the way that it's structured, there's a duality system, like I mentioned before. There's a different setup for women than there is for men. And it isn't supposed to be like that. And they advertise, oh, yeah, no, it's not different. No, that's crap. And it's from the leadership down. It's from these organizations that have embedded themselves from the Cabal, and they need this kind of chaos to exist so that they can subvert the morals and ethics of the military. And the military is the shining example of the United States. It's who provides our freedom and liberty, right? And so when we look at that shining example and we see this, we know that it's, that there's holes and stuff in it, just because it's not being presented to us. And so that reflects in our society, right? And then, of course, we do the same kind of behavior in society. It's all this parent-child relationship behavior learning. And that's really what all this comes from, is monkey see, monkey do. We say, well, the government does it, except, as long as the government doesn't get caught, right? And so there's that expectation that, well, there's a probability that we won't get caught doing the same kind of negative behaviors. And because those negative behaviors are encouraged and there is no incentive to do a non-negative behavior, that's the reason why we see it proliferate in society and why society is so negative right now.
When you were a Marine, how did you feel about the idea of killing another human?
I've got mixed feelings about this. There's something called Marine Corps orders. And the Marine Corps orders are like the Constitution. They're a set of ideas. They're words on paper. They're kind of infallible in a way. So they define what something is, right? And in this case, the Marine Corps Order 5500.6 Foxtrot, you can actually look that number up. It's the Marine Corps order that specifies the escalation of force and the use of deadly force, and defines deadly force and escalation of force. So what are we doing? Well, we're going against human nature. We are saying we're going to use a force, just like Jesus warned in Gethsemane, right? Those that live by the sword die by the sword. We're using a force to stop an equal force. And when do we use that, right? And it basically says these are the ethical principles upon which you should base this idea and this definition on. And so that is when all lesser means have failed or cannot be reasonably employed. Right? And so as a martial organization, for the protection of other people, for their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to prevent them from being mauled in the case of life, limb, or eyesight, to protect property that would would allow other people to misuse that property or misuse information, let's say, for example, that would cause a direct threat, in other words, life, limb, or eyesight to other people. Those are examples of how deadly force is designated to United States military and how we're trained to see deadly force, our kind of education, our college education. In that way, I think that this education needs to be extended to the regular populace, but it has to be presented in a very different way because you guys didn't receive the same training and see things in the same kind of martial way that the military does. You didn't go to boot camp. You don't see that dichotomy and that there's something in people that join the military, especially a paramilitary organization like the Marine Corps, that defines them in a very specific way. I had a strong desire, an ethical and moral desire to understand this relationship, to understand why it would be necessary to use enough force to be able to stop another human being and prevent that person from seeking what they love, right? And so it is possible that someone could exist that would want to destroy someone else's life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. And that is when that force would be authorized, but only, right, and only under the circumstances that you could say that all lesser means have failed or cannot be reasonably employed. I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second.
How do you feel about... Did you remember your point, or should I continue?
I never desired to kill anyone. That wasn't the reason why I joined the Marine Corps. I knew that there was a possibility that existed that I may have to be faced with this solution. And when I was faced with this solution, I trusted the fact that I was in an organization of other people that felt similarly to me. And that is more or less kind of the moral direction, the moral compass that I was involved with. That they stood for something much greater than I wanted to understand. Why would somebody sacrifice? Because there was also the possibility, the equal possibility, that my life, those that live by the sword die by the sword, that my life would also be forfeit to make sure that other people's lives would not be. And so I was willing to make that sacrifice because I understood how important life really was. I think that's a big distinction in the military too. And that was something I wanted to explore. I wanted to make that a part of myself. As an INFJ, it was part of my desire to be, an advocate, right? Having grown up in America very, very poor and having seen a part of America that probably a lot of people wouldn't necessarily gravitate to or sympathize with. And I knew that was going to need a voice someday. And I wanted to be able to describe this, even if it was in my memoirs, or share this idea with other people. And so that's kind of what gravitates people towards the military. It wasn't a desire to kill or to be killed. It was a desire to understand the relationship of the value of human action over a given lifespan. Because, like I said, there's this point in our lives where we realize that we're not going to live forever. And what are we going to do with the time that we have left? And the understanding of the value and veracity of what life is and what it means, not just to me, but to the world. And how can we extend that? How can we make that a better situation for the future generations? How can we educate other people without living it ourselves? We have to be that shining example. It's part of that leadership gambit, right?
How do you feel about women being in the Marines or being in special forces?
I don't have a problem with women being in the military. Here's what I have an issue with. That there is absolutely, without question, a dichotomy in the military. There is no G.I. Jane. If you've seen the movie, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, I'll give you a little primer. Yeah. In the real military, that's not how it works. They have a different standard. They say, okay, men will do 20 pull-ups. And if you can't do 20 pull-ups, then, that's it. But women, well, you don't have to do pull-ups. You can do this other thing that's called the flex arm hang. And so basically it's like this, you just kind of hang there and there's no real work involved because women's biology is different. It's like, no. Look, in a real situation, a real combat situation, and this happens. It has happened more than once. Women are going to be expected to carry their load. Now, not every woman is capable of doing this, which is great. That's exactly the kind of people that we want to attract to the Marine Corps. There's a specific physical component to the military that is required. Now, albeit this is not for every single military organization, like the Navy has different standards for a reason. However, pause for effect. If you are going to lower standards for women, then you cannot require those same non-martial standards for men. In other words, like non-O3, non-infantry-based job specifications in the military should not be required to have the same physical standards as those that are in a real military, a martial capacity, right? You could say, well, if the women are allowed to do flexed arm hang, that's great. If they're going to be doing an office job, what do they really need a lot of strength for anyway? Are they going to be good deploying? Well, chances are no. You see, 70% of the military, generally speaking, is support MOSs, support military occupational specialties that support that O3 element, that martial element. And I don't have a problem with women being in combat. There is the age-old argument of when a man sees a woman fall in combat, there's something that happens, and that is something that should be feared and definitely dealt with. But I believe personally that can be overcome with leadership and training. In the same way that we would revere a great leader like Alexander the Great, and we wouldn't want to see him fall in battle, we would sacrifice ourselves to make that not happen, is the same way that we would feel about women, which are the matriarchy. And I think that would actually make our military a lot stronger if it's actually directed and educated in the right place, in the right way. But generally speaking, what actually happens in the military is there is, because of that double standard, we say that there's 1% of male in the military that kind of falls through the cracks and squeaks by, and they sort of, they get fat. They don't take care of themselves. They do the lowest standard possible just to get by. Those generally are not the kind of people that we want in the military, but it happens. The filter can only work so well. Unfortunately, I can say from experience, this is only from personal experience, having been in Victor units most of my career and having witnessed it personally, that applies to women in a very negative respect. About 1% of the women are badass. They are GI fucking Jane. They're unquestionable in their leadership and their capabilities. And they will give a man a run for their money any day of the week. But that's 1%, right? It's the opposite of the male spectrum. And the rest of them are just floozies, and they get away with whatever they can because that dual spectrum is there, and they're allowed to, just trounce all over everything because, well, if I say this and I speak out against them, then of course I'm going to get charged with sexual harassment and that sort of thing. And that's a real problem in the military.
I also heard that a lot of times women in the military, they'll be a little bit promiscuous and have sex with a big number of their male counterparts.
Yeah, and that's just because of the nature of the male versus female problem solution analysis. It's human beings. It doesn't matter who the human being is. We are the most intelligent creatures on the planet, and what do we do for fun? We smash our privates together for fun, for sheer delight. And that's not going to go away in the military. You can, once again, it goes back to Gandhi's laws, right? You can't prevent somebody from doing something that they want to do, and you can't force somebody to do something that they don't want to do, right? And so people are going to want to have sex. It's enjoyable. Duh. And it's more open for women because there is a more pick of the litter. The women can literally get it from anywhere, and they have a huge masculine pool to satisfy this very primal, animalistic urge to be able to fulfill that sexual desire. And that's really strongly enforced in that dichotomy in the military especially. And there's no way to really get away from that except, like I said, through leadership and training. If you've ever read Starship Troopers or watched the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the future. If you want to fix that problem, it has to be something that's not looked down upon. It's something that people are going to do. There have to be some guidelines. There have to be some barriers to protect the individuals, basically from themselves. But other than that, the military actually, believe it or not, has a pretty good system. They have divorce classes that you have to take before you get married. And it goes a big way. But I think that there's also a big hole, just like there is in our regular society outside the military. There has to be some kind of red pill education where we understand that animalistic side, that human psychosomatic side, where, hey, guess what? We have monkey brains and we eat bananas, and at the end of the day, we fling poo. And we have to understand logically that side of the equation Otherwise, it's going to cause problems. Jordan Peterson talks about this in great detail.
Starship Troopers, that's a very interesting movie. Do you think that that is actually going to happen to our society? Will we become like this military sort of, whatever you want to call that situation they have in that movie?
Let me actually go briefly into this because this is an interesting conversation. Do you know about Robert Heinlein?
No.
So Robert Heinlein actually wrote that book, Starship Troopers. It's on the recommended reading list for military personnel. I read it, and of course I watched the movie. But Robert Heinlein also wrote another book, and it's called Stranger from a Strange Land. Have you heard the name of this book?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's actually a quote from the Bible. And it's in Exodus, and it's the portion where Moses, or Akhenaten, if you want to go into detail, is talking about the Exodus from Egypt. And so he was trained by the priest class, and he was also trained by the ruling class. And so he had a different level of knowledge, a different level of understanding, and a different language that he spoke. So when he left Egypt because he murdered an Egyptian and he wanted to escape the fate that would befall him if they found out that he had done this, and he went and found his future wife, he named his first child Gershom because his child would be like an alien child. He would receive a very special education and would know things that other children in the tribe would not know. And that's what Gershom means. I am a stranger from a strange land, which is a reflection of his own father, right? This book, believe it or not, called Stranger in a Strange Land, written by Robert Heinlein. Robert Heinlein joined the Naval Academy during 1929 at the height of the Great Depression. The subject of the book was so controversial that the publishers forced him to revise the book, and he had to remove a whole bunch of content because it was so controversial. Like there was interracial themes, there was some very strong sexual themes that was involved in this book. And it's kind of like A Brave New World, if you know anything about the book A Brave New World, which I recommend also. And it's kind of a future look at if we don't take a better assessment of society and the way that we're evolving and how we're letting technology lead the way. If we don't pay attention to whether it's going to lead to progress or regression, this is where we'll end up. And the book Stranger in a Strange Land is about colonization of Mars. And that's all I'll say about it because it's a great book and you really should read it. But it goes further in Starship Troopers, almost like you could say a sequel, where it explores if we don't put a cap on our desire to control, we could end up causing our own destruction because other species may be keen to our destructive methods and seek to prevent us in the same way that we would use deadly force to protect other people. They would seek to prevent us from destroying them. And so they're more intelligent than we are. They're more organized than we are, but they don't speak our language. So, of course, we don't know that. They come and attack us, but in fact, that's actually a preemptive attack. And there's no way for us to know that, is there? That's the real theme of Starship Troopers, and it's one of the hidden themes that that Robert Heinlein actually kind of hides in his dichotomy. And it's one of the things that kind of should be a theme that's kind of taught in intellectual circles about the subject of the book. And it's a look at exactly where we're going if we don't take a very good look and strong hold, like I said, about whether or not technology will lead to progress or regression.
Oops, sorry.
I cover a lot of information real fast. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I forgot to turn my mic on for a second. What do you think about that? Do you think that technology is incredibly dangerous to us, or is it going to save us all?
This is all right, this is between you and me right now, I guess the listeners too. That is what I'm working towards. That is what my organization works towards, is to raise awareness, education about we need to be talking about these issues. And this is exactly the reason why we're not talking about it. We're not facing these facts. We're not saying, hey guys, there's a possibility we could literally snuff out our own candle if we're not careful. And we're walking on that razor's edge right now. Humankind is literally, we're destroying our planet at an unbelievable pace. We're destroying the biodiversity that actually makes the whole planet work. And we don't know the long-term effects of that, do we? There's no way to measure that. There's no precedent in history for this. We can say that things will continue to get worse because we have a historical model that shows that ecosystems and economies fail because of the inability of us to assess our own behavior as it applies to an economic and ecological system. If we don't assess whether or not it will lead to regression, guess what it's going to do? It's going to take hold, and then by the time we realize what's gone wrong, it's going to destroy us. Look at the plagues of Egypt as a really great example.
I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's very, very green. We have a lot of marine life. There used to be orcas in our waters. Unfortunately, a lot of that life has disappeared because of the Navy, because of pollution. There's hardly any fish left. You can't fish off the docks. It's really sad and very disturbing.
Yeah. And, well, that's just you guys. That's you noticing it, in your lifetime. You haven't even lived, 30 years yet? That's roughly a third of your life.
Oh, I'm 35.
And a lot of people don't take that into consideration because our lives are so short.
Yeah, I'm an old man. I'm 35.
Well, you're not that old, because I will be 35 in 2020.
Oh, you're 30?
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm at least 33. I've made at least 33 trips around our sun.
Well, you couldn't be that old if you're recently in the military, because they only really take young men.
Yeah, I joined right out of high school, right at 18.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your organization?
All right. So I have an organization that was actually started by a friend of mine who is a really great thinker as well. It's called The Lighthouse. We were trying to find a way to create an organization that wasn't a cult. It wasn't a LARP. We didn't want to have some pseudo-religious organization. We didn't want to have a kind of idea that was going to be misused or that could be misused in some way by somebody else. Like the Illuminati, for example, it's been turned on its head. Originally, it was about seeking knowledge, and it was about finding the balance between religion and science. And so, of course, that term has been perverted over time. Can the idea of the lighthouse be perverted over time? And I don't think it could ever be perverted. We needed an idea that was pervasive and would stand the test of time. And of course, the idea of a lighthouse is to guide people away from calamity, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what the organization does. We focus on, solutions to global problems. Let me just give an example of one real quick. The one that I'm working on right now is I'm designing a software, a very specific kind of software, and without going into too much detail about it, essentially it's a terminal operation software. It's a way that everyone can interface with their computer, and their computer becomes a secure element that is 100% untouchable by an outside element unless permission is given. In the same way that our mind is our own permissive element, and it's the monad, and nobody can actually read our own minds, right? The problem that we have, and it's a really dangerous one, is that we've got all this technology, and it's all dependent on these core elements. And the core elements, because they were designed by humans, there's a backdoor. There's a way to take advantage of this system that's been designed, and it could be done by a very clever person or a very clever group of people. And if it hasn't been done so yet, that they will do it, and it's kind of a rush right now. Kind of like Alexander Graham Bell to invent the telephone, except this is more like a protective kind of element to make sure that individual freedom online and on these devices is not circumvented by a greater system that could use that to control the populace.
Are you a programmer?
What's that?
Are you a programmer?
I would describe myself as a cyberneticist. But yes, I am a programmer on, kind of on the side. It comes with the bag. You can't make robots if you don't know how to program them.
Yeah, you'd have to be a pretty smart dude to be able to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. Your word's humble.
Well, that's pretty impressive that you've not only started this organization, but you're actually a little bit of a computer genius.
Really, I would say that I'm more like a naturalist in the same way that Tesla was. See, genius just comes from a capacity for curiosity. That's what I believe personally. And anyone has the ability to be curious, but not everyone explores their own capacity, their own gift for curiosity. And I guess you could say I was gifted in the fact that I was allowed, I was able to, it was made conducive for me to be able to explore my curiosity and where my curiosity took me. And to me, The real magic was the natural side of what allowed all of this to kind of take place. That I explored the naturalism behind the ideology of the progenitor or the designer. I believe personally, in a designed element universe. In other words, that this is not all just a coincidence that someone designed this. This is here. It's made for us to observe and to enjoy, and to kind of question in a way. And that's where I'm at. Is I've started to question the element that allows me to question these elements. Where does the source of my thought come from? And can I stand outside of that, observe it, and take that observation and put it into practice? And that is the idea of cybernetics, is sort of, in a way, painting the painter's muse. Somebody came along and they invented something really fantastic. They wrote this really fantastic autobiography. I read the autobiography and I'm like, oh my God, this is an incredible work. How do I make something that's like this, right? And everyone's just trying. In a way, we're all these artists, and we're trying to copy a facet of this incredible magnum opus that was created by some other really fantastic artist. And so none of us really have the ability to create our own ideas or to create our own anything for that matter. But what we can do is we can make this attempt. And I believe that's part of the purpose of the design of life. But that's more or less kind of the drive behind cybernetics, because I realized once, the same that I described about the Marine Corps, that if we are endowed with these incredible powers, which we really are, every human is, everyone has the capacity to be the kind of genius that I am. It's not some special gift that no one can achieve that happens it has happened every once in a while, just as a matter of chance, I believe. But everyone has the capacity to be able to seek this. And that is the thing that we have been, if you want to call it a truth, that is the kind of thing that's been hidden from us for a very long time. And it's a weapon. It's not just a tool, it's an incredible weapon. And it goes back to the age-old dichotomy of the seeking of the knowledge of good and evil. It's not the knowledge itself that's bad. It's what can be done with it. So I realized this kind of early on, and I said, okay, how do I seek this knowledge in such a way that I can pass it down like a message in a bottle, so that if mankind ends up attempting to self-destruct or something terrible happens, we can start back over and accelerate back to this point so we can make the proper choices the next time, right? We can kind of learn as a cautionary tale. And that's where my goal is kind of centered around, is my legacy. What I'm going to leave behind is everything that I've started to seek. And it culminates in faster than light travel, which I believe personally, if I do my job really well, that mankind in about 50 to 80 years will be ethically and morally capable of accepting responsibility to be able to leave our solar system on vessels that travel faster than light all over the universe.
What do you think of black budget technologies, anti-gravity, invisibility? Do they have this stuff?
This is what I'll tell you. Number one, I don't trust organizations that call themselves government. Notice that I didn't say I don't trust the government. The government is an idea. It's words on paper. It's the organizations of individuals that are misusing the government. Now, this is what I'll tell you. The researcher that discovered nickel titanium dropped off the map after he discovered it because he realized that the Navy was never really going to use it for anything except for weapons. The same for pretty much any really remarkable technology that has come to the civilian sector from the military, including the internet. And it's Philo T. Farnsworth is a really great example. Television is being used as a psychological weapon all over the world, in fact. And this is kind of why he didn't support research into and furthering his fusion type technology, because he knew that the military was going to misuse it and abuse it. This is the real reason why the military does not have, because they're Cabal driven. The Cabal cannot create anything new. Their focus is only on control and power and seeking that power. If you have enough focus, which they do, and that's why they're so successful, but they don't have enough focus left over at the end of the day to be able to create something new. They don't know how to do that, and they don't know how to go about planning to do that. So that's why people like us exist that are able to create something new. And so if you think about these black budgets and why we say, well, does this technology exist? Doesn't this technology exist? I'll tell you, if it existed, the government would already be using it against us. In the same way that we knew about the atomic bomb. So if they have I'm sure that they want our neighbors, the Russians and so on, to believe that we have this super advanced technology, and that's been leaked to the public. But the truth is that they're being paid by money, and the money is debt-based. And so a lot of these scientists and so on are receiving these huge budgets to basically sit around and continue to fail at experiments, because that's how science works nowadays. Science isn't based on it's not based in a success-based model. It's based in a failure-based model.
Is the government working with aliens?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't believe that the government is working with aliens, because if you think about all the possibilities that exist in terms of logic, why would an alien organization work with a government? They could just simply use cloaking technology, live among us, kind of like in the movie They Live, and then just subvert the population. I think there's a TV show that came on. It was a series. It was like Z or Y or something like that. And it was the same kind of concept. The aliens had subverted the population. They were in these invisible ships. They were lizard-like people. And so they had basically taken over society from the outside. Was that?
V for Victor.
V, there you go. Yeah, I knew it was at the end of the alphabet somewhere. Yeah. That's a really great concept. But if that was the case, once again, we would still know about it, right? We would be aware of it. And there's no way to really hide that from the population. Remember, like I said, we're like kids. We're watching mommy and daddy. So once again, this is the Cabal's disclosure. It's a way for them to get everybody focused away from making any positive changes in society, and keep them focused on the game that the Cabal is playing, so that it makes it easy for them to manipulate human beings. It's all programming. It's all social behavioral programming. That's really all. Everything is. Every tactic the Cabal used, it's got their fingerprints all over it. And it's real easy to figure it out. That's the reason why the Lighthouse, which I mentioned before, we have this organizational idea that we've been working on for a while. It's called Second Renaissance. And that, like I said, we were trying to seek something that wasn't cult-based. It wasn't religious-based. We didn't want it to be, something that could be perverted in the future. And so the Renaissance happened after the Dark Ages, when people realized, well, hold on, the wool's been pulled over our eyes. We're waking up, and then suddenly they have access to knowledge and all the incredible things they do with it. Yeah. And so the Second Renaissance is obviously the second iteration of that. And of course, because of the software and the things that I'm working on and the organization is working on, that will really accelerate things and allow this to kind of happen in a very positive direction. Sorry, I got off topic. What did you ask me?
Oh, I just asked in general if the government is working with aliens, but let me ask you a different question.
Yeah, I don't think that the government's working with aliens, and those are the reasons why I believe that. Because if that was the case, like I said, it would be much more widespread. Even in the event, that there are citizens that have these close encounters. In fact, I went to middle school. One of my algebra teachers in middle school in the 6th grade, she was a contactee. That's a real thing. She even told us students, right there in class and everything. And so that was a big impact on my life, because I was like, there must be something to this, I don't, at this point, I don't have enough information. I don't have enough factual information to say definitively one way or the other that aliens exist or don't. But if they did, there's a reason why we're not hearing from them. And I believe that is because we're too busy killing each other. And if they do have an advanced technology, then it's because they didn't have this kind of conflict, or they evolved past this kind of conflict in their civilization. And they know better than to help and breed a civilization that can't figure out how to get past its own internal conflicts to evolve to that state. Make sense?
Sure. What do you think of the whole flat Earth thing?
Flat Earth is basically what you're seeing is a consequence of withholding information. The Catholic Church, the Illuminati, all these organizations that have been withholding information, going back to the Library of Alexandria being burned by the Pythagoreans. My theory, by the way, they are basically a symptom of the disease of the system that we've been dancing around this whole time. The flat earthers say the things that they say and they believe the things that they believe because they know that there's something wrong with the system, but they can't put their finger on it. They're like, look, there's a hole. There's a loophole here. There's a problem in the law. There's a problem in this flawed logic. And look, we're pointing it out. We know that there's a problem here. Maybe some of it's true, but how do we really get around it? Obviously, we're being lied to, right? And in a way, they're very, very right, and people should be paying attention to them. But in another way, they're kind of wrong, too, because they don't have all the facts, right? They want to pretend like they know everything in the same way that Q and QAnon does, and they're kind of cult-like in this way. That whole groupthink mentality is actually very degradative in the ability, because what if there's information that they possess, that they present, that's very valid, especially about gravity and some of the things that they do, some of the arguments that they present that are very logical, very well thought out, and extremely intelligent, okay? Because they're saying there's a problem with this way of thinking. They're kind of muddying the water by going to too great a lengths and saying the earth is flat. So now everybody thinks that they're just a bunch of nutcases, right? So, if you want to spread a message in kind of a way, they're a cautionary tale, and they're saying, okay, well, there's something wrong. People are talking about it, but what's the real skinny? What's the real truth? How are we using what's in this pan to sift for the real gold that's at the bottom of the river? That's what I think about the flat earthers, generally speaking.
As somebody that's into computers and programming, what do you think of the hacker group Anonymous?
It's a mixed bag, because with Anonymous, it's the same problem as the Illuminati that I mentioned before. You're going to end up with two sides of that coin. You're going to end up with people that are wearing the mask, that are claiming to be anonymous, in the same way that there are people that claim to be Cicada 3301, and Defango's come out and he said all this stuff about this organization that they're not the real Cicada or whatever, and that happens in the anonymous group as well, and it's a real problem, but it's not the anonymous problem. It's a problem with the individuals and the problem of the people that are kind of following it almost like a cult. They don't look far enough into it. They don't do enough research and say, okay, are there traits that you can see that are commonalities between these individuals that are benevolent and are truly what's the term? Altruists, the kind of anonymous that are altruists at heart, that really have the best interests of the people in mind, that are really fighting for liberty and freedom. And then there's of course the NSA agents that are posing as anonymous, trying to gather people up and get them caught in things. And there's other organizations that are misusing people, etc., like Quinn Michaels and his group. It's rampant. It's a problem system wide. It's systemic. But generally speaking, anonymous, like the United States Marine Corps, kind of attracts a certain kind of person with certain skills and certain morality. But so generally speaking, I believe in the anonymous movement, but it's being abused and misused. And I think it's a shame, because now anonymous people that are working hard have to waste their time redoubling their efforts and kind of seeking out these scabs and peeling them back and exposing them. And that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of resources, and it takes away from their ability to be able to actually protect and serve and do the things that they really want to be doing. And, there's a concerted effort in this, obviously, in our group, in our organization, and that's why we started the Lighthouse and kind of the direction that we're going, because we can foster anons and we can help them with resources to help them, move forward and do really incredible things, and keep them kind of away from that negative mentality, because not every time you hear the word anonymous do you think of necessarily positive things, in the same way that every time you see the police organizing in public, you're like, well, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Something might be going down. So, in some facets, like November, the 5th of November, for example, the Guy Fawkes Day, there are people that take that too far, in the same way that there are people that go to rallies for Trump or Hillary Clinton or anything else, and they get violent and they get stupid. That goes back to that cult mentality, that herd behavior. And any organization is going to attract that kind of people. And I mentioned that actually before in the dichotomy in the military, where you've got those one percenters that are just kind of dragging along and they're just there as a bandwagoner. This happens a lot more outside the military, because the morality and the structure is very different for humankind than it is for like a military or a martial organization.
what do you think about people going out there and physically protesting?
This is a really good question, because the answer to this is not really simple. It's not really well defined. And the biggest reason for that is that there is a lot, and I mean a tremendous amount of information out there that exists. There's so much information that how do you go about, let's say that we employed every human being on the planet, and their job for the rest of their life, for the rest of their living time on Earth, was just to parse information that already exists, like in books, periodicals, etc., to gather that information, shorten it, right, and then pass it to the one person over from them in a big giant line. And how long would it take for mankind to catch up to the information that we've already created? By the way, we're still creating new information as that happens. And you see the problem, because now we have way too much information, and there's access to this information. And of course, because of the differing opinions of the people, the way they were raised, their ideas, their dichotomy, all of that, it affects the way that we define that information and those traits. So with protests, it's the same kind of problem, isn't it? Because you get a bunch of people together, and while they're generally united behind a kind of idea, that idea isn't necessarily well defined. There isn't a real vision behind it. So it has a problem where probably, because of the cabal mostly, it's been abused to a system that now doesn't actually perform the function for society that it once did or should. And that's the real problem with protests. But the solution is much better organized protesters and much more intellectual protesters to use the system of protest as the way that it was intended to be used, to inform and educate. And that's really difficult to do, because now we've got a same situation to the anonymous problem, where there's people that don't believe in anonymous because they know that there's people in anonymous that do bad things. And it's also compounded by the fact, that there's organizations like the KKK or the Man Love Boy Association that do protests. And so, you're wary of certain organizations. You're afraid of those organizations because what if you're supporting an organization that's bad, right? And that's one of the reasons why people don't vote, and it causes a bunch of problems in society. This, believe it or not, is actually a tactic of the cabal, and they intend for this to happen. They need for people to become apathetic, to lose faith in the system, and to kind of vote the system away so that they can take better control. And that's the real issue. That's the terrifying truth behind what is going on with protesting, not just in the United States, but the world over. It's a system that I believe just needs just one little tweak. And the tweak to that system is that instead of a protest, it needs to be a celebration. Because a protest is saying that there's something bad that's happening and we need to do something about it, whereas a celebration is a way to take that bad thing that we're trying to report and say there's something good that came of it. In the same way that there was a celebration when they tore down the Berlin Wall. That is the future of viral progression behind any kind of protest that you want to have some kind of progress behind. So, let's say, for example, I have I'm trying to organize an event in February, and it involves Make-A-Wish Foundation and children that are very, very sick, and so they might not have the opportunity to celebrate their birthday, and they might not live that long. And so, why is it that we're spending millions and millions of dollars on war when one of those kids could be looking up at the stars at night and saying, I wonder. And they might be the next Goddard. They might be the key to some special technology that we haven't even conceived of yet. And why are we spending trillions and trillions of dollars on war and killing each other and basically destroying our possibility at giving birth to a progeny that will save us and become our salvation? Why are we going to war instead of focusing on curing children and child diseases that are literally wiping out our greatest single investment in human history, which is our children? And so let's have a celebration. Let's make a birthday party for them, and let's make it so widely publicized that we can get some real support behind it. That's how a protest should be used, and then make it like a world record, event. And that's I'm actually planning a number of events leading up to the election in 2020, and that's one of them. And so, that's really how protesting could be used, and could be, I would love to coordinate with other people to make this kind of stuff happen, because I think that is the most exciting part of an evolving organization of human beings is that we don't have to be hum and glum about everything. The news always teaches us to be afraid, and we can break that cycle. And that's really where protesting can actually change, and how I feel about protesting in general. I don't think that just going out and beating the streets and then saying, look at this bad thing that's going on, because people don't. That's why they're going to ignore it. Nobody wants to know what's bad is going on in the world. Who wants to be part of that party? Who wants to be part of a pity party? Nobody. But if you're throwing a birthday party, right, and you've got the world's largest cake ever made by human beings, it's like, look at what humans can accomplish. Look at what we can do when we organize and when we put our minds to it. And that's really what protesting should be all about.
And speaking of the upcoming election in 2020, what do you think of our current president, Donald J. Trump?
Well, I'm not going to speak badly about the president because that's unprofessional, and it's not really helpful. Those kinds of things are really childish, and it's one of the reasons how you can tell if a politician is really worth their ilk or not. If they're going around bashing somebody else and saying that they're this and they're that, I'm not going to say anything negative about Mr. Trump. I'll tell you what I know to be true. Donald Trump is a racehorse. Now, hold on. I'm making a comparison here. He was born a racehorse. He was bred a racehorse from two parents that were also winning racehorses, right? And so everything that he has been entrained with is about that track. And I'm telling you what, when you take that crop and you hit his flank, that boy runs, and sure does he run fast. And all he knows is the track. And he's good at it. You bet. You can put your money on it, because I'll tell you what, he's a billionaire, and it's not by accident. So in that respect, he's very awesome. But in another respect, he's very dangerous, because someone that has a lot to lose like that doesn't want to lose it. And it makes him very, very easily manipulatable. So, it's a double-edged sword. Do we need our country run like a business? If the answer is no, then Donald J. Trump is not the best president after 2020. But that's not something for me to decide. That's something for the American people to come to a decision on. That's something they're going to have to be educated about, and they're going to have to think about. And they're not. No one's told them exactly what's going on. They're absolutely uninformed. They have no clue that this guy, he's not running it like a traditional government has. And that's the reason why he's successful. He's doing something new and something different, right? But that's not going to work forever. Once the newness kind of wears off and people get settled in, they're going to be like, okay, that's great. We're on this really great path. But what's next? You can't keep running it like a business, because you're just going to run it into the ground, because every business is designed literally to fail. We don't want our country to fail. We're going to have to figure out a way once this momentum kicks in on how to fix things and actually, go about doing some real work, right? Not just building a wall that we know we're going to have to spend a ton of money to maintain, et cetera, right? That's not a good business plan. So what do I think about Trump? I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think that he is a great businessman. I think that he's pretty smart. I think that he's definitely underplayed by the mainstream media, obviously for very good reasons. But I also believe that there is a possibility that he could be like an unwitting Manchurian candidate, meaning that it's very easy to manipulate him and get him to do certain things. If you can manipulate the market in a specific way, you could get him to kind of react, right? Because he's a reactionary animal, just like any racehorse on a track. He sees another horse coming up by his flank, he's going to act a certain way. He's going to move closer to the inside. And if they know that that's what he's going to do, that means they just manipulated him and he doesn't realize it.
What does your gut tell you?
American people won't realize it. They're going to be on the bandwagon saying, yeah, Trump, MAGA, right? And they're going to be waving their hands in the air, and they're not going to realize the danger that they're in because they can't be informed fast enough.
What does your gut tell you, Alexandros? Is Trump a puppet to the cabal, or is he legitimate?
My gut tells me, not to trust somebody whose God is paper currency. That's what my gut tells me. He works for money. He works for a paycheck. If you work for a paycheck, guess what? That rules your life. You are afraid to not get it. You believe in your heart of hearts, in your belief of beliefs, that is God, that it is what makes the world go round. And that's Trump in a nutshell. He believes in the power of money. He thinks that money is going to save mankind. It's not. Money doesn't save mankind. Mankind created money, so therefore we can create the solution, right, that gets us out of this money problem. But
money makes
try to tell
people
that.
money makes people act funny.
I wouldn't even say that. I think that it's a matter of programming. It's been around. It's a convention that we created a very long time ago. It's had many generations to sink in, and the individuals, the Khazarians, the Rothschilds, etc., they've had many generations to be able to look at the cause and effect. They've been able to poke us, record what happened, right? And then it's just a market trend of behavior. And so they just manipulate that behavior a little bit each time, and they're able to get a different result. And we don't even pay attention because we don't have enough resources and we don't live long enough and we're not organized well enough, right? Because it's just one small organization of people, right? And they're running the rest of us like a bunch of cattle. And that's exactly what we are to them. But that's how money manipulates people, is that we've been led to believe, we've been programmed, if you will, for a very long time into believing that money is this thing that it isn't. It's not that the money forces people to do something. It's that we believe that money is associated with money is associated with value. And money is not value. Money is a thing. Things are not valuable. What's really valuable is human action. You cannot put a price on human action. What can a human do? What can a human create? Humans created television. Humans created programming. What can you do with programming? You can do anything with programming. Any problem that you can solve with language, with human language, you can also solve with programming. True fact. And so money didn't do that. Humans did. Money was the grease, right? So if I take a wheel and I try to push that wheel down a metal track, there's going to be a little bit of friction. But if I take some grease and I grease up that wheel or I grease up that track, what's going to happen? It's going to slick and it's going to slide, right? So money was a great tool that allowed us the ability to accelerate things forward, but we never looked. Once again, it goes back to that conversation we had about progress and regression. We didn't look forward enough because we weren't able to say, hey, is money going to get us what we want? And when we get it, can we wean ourselves off of this technology to prevent something bad from happening? That is the theme behind Starship Troopers, behind these other books that I talked about, some other things that I talked about, is that we have the ability to create these things that make our lives accelerate faster and get us to another point, but we have to sit down. We have to have this discussion and say, wait a minute, when we get to where we're going, how do we get ourselves off of this cocaine? How do we get off the cocaine train? Because that's really what money represents. It's like this addiction that we have. We think that it's the world, and it's not. It's just an idea, just like anything else. I mean, eventually, even the Constitution, even the ideas of our language are going to melt away to the tides of time. Our language is going to evolve. It's going to change. We're going to create new things that will allow us to be organized better. And, things that even I can't imagine. It's difficult to say. I mean, we're talking more than 2,500 years in the future now. Go ahead.
Let's explore the other end of the spectrum. What do you think of socialism / communism / Marxism?
Yeah, so let's look at Karl Marx, and look at his perspective on life, right? In the same way that I have a different way of looking at things because I was in the military, having been in the Marine Corps, and I see the world through a different set of eyes, through leadership and these kind of examples. It's a kind of idealism, a kind of programming. The same way Karl Marx looked at the world, right? He saw the world as this perfect organization because he believed in the principles, the morality that actually made this organized religion, this organization, work and make progress. He believed in that. And he believed in it so strongly that he thought, well, this is just going to proliferate and things are going to get better, right? Without, of course, having the perspective and realizing that all these negative, terrible things were happening behind the scenes, he still had faith in that system. You see? He was brainwashed. He had that groupthink mentality. So socialism and communism are the same kind of things. They're these ideas, these technologies that we've invented, but we didn't really assess where that was going to take us. So let's look at communism and socialism because really they end up in the same place. Socialism is communism and communism is socialism, but really what you're doing is you're looking at a zebra. You're saying, well, it's a white horse with black stripes, and then the other person is saying, well, it's a black horse with white stripes. It's the same thing. It's the same animal colored differently, And really what it comes down to is utopia. All right? What we're dancing around is the idea of utopia. What is utopia? A utopia is we're going to define it right here, clearly, plain as crystal. Utopia is a well-defined, linear, closed system without change. Right? So let's try to picture mankind as a utopia. Mankind as a utopia would be Adam and Eve, two humans. There's only enough in the system to provide abundance for those two human beings without them having children, without them proliferating on the whole planet. And the planet is able to heal itself, right? And able to proliferate in such a way that it's always creating new diversity and new life. Because there's only enough humans on the planet, because we're the apex predator, to be able to consume enough resources for the Earth to be able to, recoup those resources, and then of course, spit back just a little bit out more each year, right? That goes by, each rotation around the sun. That is the idea of a utopia. Can we effectively achieve a utopia? And the answer is no, right? It's a pretty obvious no, and it doesn't take a scientist or a physicist or a genius to figure this out. So nobody is going to want to give up what they have now. No socialist wants to live in a socialist society. They will very quickly pack up their bags and say, this is cool, this was fun, but the vacation's over and it's time to go back to the real world because I want my luxury and I want what I want, right? We go back to Gandhi, right? You can't force somebody to do something they don't want to do, and you can't keep people from doing something they want to do. They've already been programmed. They already know that there's better things. So even if you could, let's say theoretically, pull off an M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, right? And you could get the adults to play along for a couple of generations long enough to brainwash everybody into thinking that this is a perfect way of life, like the German Baptists, for example, or the Amish, for example. Even if you could initiate something like that, it's still not a true utopia, is it? Because they still have a hierarchy, they still have a ruling class in a way, right? And it's not completely like Adam and Eve. And so how can you digress to that organization level from this much, much higher organization level? And the answer is effectively, it's not achievable. And it's just simple logic and deductive reasoning that can get you to this conclusion. But of course, you could mathematically prove it out on paper, and it comes down to closed systems and how much resources are available in that system and the need for those resources. So that need is actually greater than what the Earth can provide because we understand the law of conservation of mass and energy. The Earth can only produce so much. And because there's enough diversity on the planet that it needs most of those resources, and then, of course, we're the other element, how many humans are left? Well, we have way too many. So that's why socialism and communism will always lead to a divergence in the population, and it will always lead to destruction because the idea to achieve this is so strong, right? Because it's an ideology that we will literally, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We will make it come true. And so do we want to kill off most of the population to achieve an Adam and Eve-like status? Is that a wise idea? Well, obviously no, right? We're opposed to this idea. That's why we're having this conversation, because there are people out there that really want to initiate this. They want to destroy the population. They want to have control. And really, when it comes down to it, in the same way, they don't want this either. They know that system is not sustainable. Even if they hit the reset button and send us all back to the Stone Age, even if they did blow everything up and live in these bunkers underground, that they don't have the ability to be able to create the new scientists, the new chemists, the new machinists and stuff that will be able to get us back to this point all over again, because those guys are going to be all gone.
Alexandros, I do want to get into this whole idea of the elite and depopulating the Earth potentially, but would you mind if we took a quick 10-minute break? I just need to step outside and then come back in, and I've got plenty more to talk about with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, and since we're on Skype, you can just stay on the line, or you can hang up and I can call you back, but I'm going to play some music, and I'm going to head outside and pop right back in. It'll take about 10 minutes. Hello and welcome back to End of Days Radio. This is Daniel, your host. Alexandros, are you there?
I most certainly am.
Excellent.
Good to be with you.
Excellent. Good to be with you as well, good sir. But why don't we go ahead and pick up where we left off? Alexandros, is this evil elite cabal, these so-called Illuminati, are they planning to kill us all?
Yeah, they're definitely okay. So let's put it this way, right? They're converted to Judaism, and so that means that they have this pre-programmed belief that there is an end of the world. It has to be either it's brought about by man or brought about by aliens, or whatever it is that they choose to believe in. And they're going to try to drive the train that direction, aren't they? That's what they believe. And so if you don't understand, that's really what's going on. Revelation is more or less like a warning to the rest of the world, or a guidebook for them in their case, and they're using that. That's how they plan to actually execute all these plans. That's why it looks like prophecy, because some time ago, some genius wrote down, he was like, hey, there's going to be a group of people that are organized that will probably try to use a kind of social control method. And these are the things to watch for, and it'll be about this time, because that's about how long it takes for human behavior to proliferate in this way, and how long it will take for humankind. So we have a historical record, don't we? We can watch empires rise and fall. We know approximately how many years, how many cycles it's going to be until the next kingdom is going to rise, and they're going to be able to organize enough of humanity, just like the Tower of Babel, is being told, to such a degree that they can control pretty much the entire planet's worth of people. And that's really what the prediction's all about. And that's what they have, a goal to control mankind. And of course, if they can't do that, right, they can't program us the way that they want us to do. If we won't do what they want us to do, then of course they're going to execute plans to initiate a kind of fear-based control. And that includes reducing the population as a cautionary tale. And be like, look, if you don't do what we tell you to do, we just have the power to wipe you out like gods. And that's really what their goal is to become godlike. They believe this. It's in their religious text. They believe this stuff. It's the same with the Muslims, which actually, believe it or not, that gets even scarier, because they believe in the quickening as well, that it's their responsibility, because of their religious texts, to assist in the bringing about of this Armageddon, this Megiddo, so that there's a global control, because that's what they believe in their texts. They believe that their system has to be the only system, or it won't be able to succeed. And in a way, they're right. They will bring about a kind of socialist communist utopia. If you read anything about the Quran and what their belief system is, that's essentially what it is. It's a kind of Marxism that's modified, and there's special rules. It's all the same thing. But yes, absolutely, there is a organized organization, a group of people. It's rather small. We're talking, less than 100,000 people worldwide that are kind of in on the gag. And so, they've prepared, and they've got, underground bunkers, if you want to call that. Alex Jones talks a little bit about it. That's what this whole thing is about, is he's kind of singing it in a different way. He's trying to wake people up in his own way and prepare, some people in the event that does happen, that there's a resistance force that the Cabal just can't get away with whatever they want. And this past year, we've actually seen a big change in their plans. I personally believe that they've accounted for this. They are aware that this is going to happen, and they're kind of feigning sick, if you will, to get us into a very comfortable sense and situation so that they can swing in with a big global problem. I call that the disclosure event, and that's when they'll be able to just come out and say, oh, look, we've got this solution. Let's say their goal is to immediately crash either the economy by destroying the petrodollar and cause World War III, or to literally cause World War III through a political panic or otherwise. But that's how they would be able to seize control of a large amount of the population, because how power really works.
Wait. Do you mean disclosure event as in aliens?
I mean disclosure as in insert magical sense here, insert magical whatever here. Disclosure is going to be an event that they have planned. Okay, no matter what it is, it's going to be disclosure, because that's what Armageddon means, by the way. That's what it literally. Look up the definition. It's a revealing, and that's what disclosure. That's what their goal is to get this disclosure, because that is how you get everyone on the same page. You either get them when they're children and program them from the time that they're born, which they've already worked on. They've done it for generations now. They planned all this. And the second way to do it is to get everybody's attention and get them aligned on a goal. Look at what Kennedy did with the space race. And that's what the Cabal is doing. It's a proven model. We know that it works. We have plenty of history to tell us that it does work. And that's their next goal, is to get everybody kind of on the same page, so they're easy to we're programmed. We're ready to listen to whatever it is that they're going to spit out. And the majority of the population, as it exists right now, will believe hook, line, and sinker whatever they sell them. And that's a problem. That's why we're on this radio broadcast, and I'm trying to inform people and let people know about what's really going on.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Alexandros. I feel like I've been programmed pretty much my whole life. I feel like most things that I've learned probably are either not true at all, or they are half-truths, or they've been inverted somehow. It's very troubling because sometimes I have trouble figuring out what exactly is real and what isn't.
Yeah. And that's where, remember I talked about at the beginning of the broadcast, you probably have some listeners that have done some psychedelics and stuff like that and have been in the process of seeking truth as part of their life. That's why it's a sacred process. And that's one of the biggest problems is, the Cabal has designed this. Okay, they've engineered this. They want people to start waking up because they need there to be some conflict, right? It makes it possible for them to set the stage. It's a big chess game to them. So the people that are kind of waking up and seeing the truth, now we're kind of alarmed, right? And we're easy to manipulate. Remember how I mentioned about Trump and how he can be very easily manipulated because he's a billionaire. He sees the world from a certain perspective. If they know that there's going to be people waking up, in advance, then they already have plans for us. You can bet. So they need us to be afraid. They need us to be bashful and kind of, wonder what's really going on and be asking questions. Because if we're asking questions and we keep digging, that's how Q got his, that's how I know that Q's garbage. Period. QAnon's a bunch of garbage. Because they need us focused on something that's not important. What's important right now? To act, to be informing other people, to start moving forward with the second renaissance so we can capture the attention and the focus away from what the Cabal wants and get it on something that's actually meaningful that will take the attention away, the power away from the Cabal. And that's what they don't want us to do. So what is all the rest of this stuff? It's all fluff. It's all fun and games. It's all part of the big treasure hunt. What's the goal? Well, the goal is to expose the Cabal, but by the time we've exposed them, they will already have had their plan set in motion, and we're just going after the low-hanging fruit. Remember how I mentioned about there's so much information now. How do you get the right information to the right people at the right time? They engineered this situation that we're in right now. You better believe it.
Alexandros, what do you think of the situation happening on the Gaza Strip between Israel and the Palestinians?
Yeah, so any kind of conflict that you're going to see globally, pretty much all modern wars at this point are ideological. They are no longer about money. They're no longer about territory. It's oh gosh. I'm trying to remember the Hatfields and McCoys, right? It's this family feud that nobody remembers what the real argument was about or who stubbed whose toe at whose house. That's what really everything that's going on there is all about. It's once again, it's also engineered by the Cabal. They need this conflict to hide what's really going on. Personally, I believe remember how I talked about how the Cabal, one of their goals is to gain immortality. They can't actually create anything. They don't know how to create. All they can do is steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what they're doing. So in a way, they are like CERN and these other organizations are their little piggy bank projects so that they can figure out the keys to immortality so they can basically become gods. And I believe personally that, all the stuff with Pedogate and the human trafficking problems that we're starting to see come to light in Hollywood and these other big organizations, including nonprofits, even you're going to see a lot more of it too with the ministry, the big ministries. That's all going to come out not very long from now. They're all going to get exposed. But the whole human trafficking thing is not about what you think. It's not about child sacrifice. I'm sure that's part of it. I'm sure there are people doing that. And the psychic vampires that what's his name talks about. They're wishful thinkers. They're people that have power and they have enough time that they can spend money and time on something, and it gives a little bit of meaning to their life, I guess, because they live this terrible life. But the whole human trafficking thing, the real circle of hell, is that they're gathering the genetic information of all of the bloodlines on Earth, and they're looking for something. And essentially, it's like the keys of immortality. They're taking basically there are going to be labs that people find, and it's going to be like the Holocaust, except for kids, and that's what they're going to find.
Oh
They're
my
going to find
God.
that, literally they have these people plugged up to machines in these, bunkers and stuff underground. They've been studying them like lab rats. It's the real deal. Like it's all going to come out, eventually. But that's not going to be part of the Cabal's disclosure. That'll be part of whatever we're going to be working on. So,
And boy, yeah, this is very very deep. I did want to ask you, what about the whole concept, or let me ask you this: was there a real Jesus Christ?
yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure myself, but everything that I can figure out, okay, that I've read, leads me to believe that it was a story that was meant to be ambiguous. However, comma, pause for effect, okay? I personally, and I don't like going into my own personal beliefs, but I personally think that there's something really unusual. There's way too much detail. There's an unbelievable amount of detail in the Bible. And I'm not just talking about the Bible. I'm talking about the original Phoenician manuscripts, 22-letter language, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, all that stuff, okay? All of it. There's unbelievable amounts of detail going into genealogy, genetics, the years, the seasons. It's recording everything so that we literally have it as a historical record. Somebody who had knowledge about the origins of language in our genetic code, tetragrammaton, for example, Greek word. It is a 14-letter word. No, I'm sorry. Is it 12-letter? Tetragram. Yes, 14. Yeah, 14 letters. So tetragrammaton is a 14-letter word. Now, here's what's strange about tetragrammaton. It's a Greek word. It means a 4-letter word. Now, they needed a way to explain God, right, to the layman in the New Testament. And so they chose, every time you'd see the word L-O-R-D in the New Testament, they replaced it with the word tetragrammaton, which means a 4-letter word. Okay. Now, what does it say in John? It says in the beginning, the word was with God and the word was God, right? What is God? Word. Okay. So make a language. This is where this gets crazy. Make a language, okay, that is so diverse that it can create anything, but it's terse enough that it can be used and understood. And what do we end up with? At least a minimum, each word would have to be a minimum of 4 letters, which means that there has to be like an alphabet that's large enough to be able to construct, right, these ideas and this symbology that gives birth to explanation of the world and the universe that's been created. And that's the origin of language itself, the origin of origin, in fact, because what is DNA made up of? And now we know it's 4 letters, right? And it's everything. It all seems to just sort of circle around this drain that's sucking down and leads to this central idea. No matter how you get around it, you can have scientists and so on, everybody can look into it. How genius would you have to be to construct a literary work that lasts the test of time, but has the information encoded in it in such a way that it's so intuitive and focused? What I mean by that is that we're going to go back to the original Phoenician, and we'll look at something just really, really simple, right? In the beginning, God said. In the beginning, God said. Yeah. So we say universe, right? One sound, right? One word, one verse, one song. And so everything is this description, right? So how do we describe things? The origin of language, even language itself, was probably a gift in a way. It was like man's original revelation into that self-seeking. Now, he didn't have television. He didn't have problems of the regular world. And so that's like, it's an allegory. It's a way of saying man really existed in the way that it describes in the Bible. And believe it or not, this is provable. And it's logic-based, which is really strange to think of it as that kind of idea. But that's really what's going on. So logically speaking, if we understand the model of DNA with the modern understanding of technology and so on that we have, right, with the modern, everything that we've learned as a culmination, because this Bible, book, this story, this myth, allowed us to seek nature in such a way that we've reached a pinnacle of society where we have an organized thought pattern and we're able to pass on information and describe the universe in a specific way. Are we brainwashed by this book? Or did it assist us to be able to get to this level of society? I call it the message in a bottle situation. So this language goes back to Jesus. So why is this so special? Okay, so we're going to take a single genetic human being that's perfect, and we're going to break off a piece of his DNA so that he's no longer two double helix spirals that are crossed across each other. We're basically going to make it 2.5 or 1.5. And we'll take that other little piece, and it has just enough information to write most of that perfection and one more copy. And this is the idea of called the universal constructor, also called the universal Turing machine. It's talked about by John von Neumann, who's a famous mathematician. He came up with the mutually assured destruction. Listen, if you want to read about a real genius, look up John von Neumann, okay? And that's part of my inspiration in how I'm able to create software and all this other cool stuff. But he had this idea of the universal constructor. And so it has just enough information that it can make a copy of itself and then be able to make another one, right? And that's basically what Adam gave birth to. He gave birth to Eve. So there's enough genetic information between the male and female to continue proliferation, even if the male is damaged, right? Even if the female is damaged. So that's that 4-letter word, right? That goes back to those same 4 letters. That there's enough diversity in this language, 4 letters, that allows this to be constructed. So let's say that this is true. Let's postulate that this is true. Over the generations, as the genetics feed in and out of each other and they create these unusual new patterns, a proliferation, they will eventually lead back to that original perfect pattern, won't they? There's no way around this. And so when will that culminate? There's a certain amount of time, there's a certain number of proliferations that can be measured from the beginning point, from the start point of where that genetic code stopped, and then to the next time when it was going to proliferate. And that's why he was able to predict the birth of Jesus, because they knew by the seasons, just by studying nature and what they knew, and about approximately how fast mankind was proliferating, when about this would occur, right? And there's that prophecy. They knew math. The ancients weren't stupid. They knew about math. Whoever wrote this book is a genius. And here's where it gets interesting, because the line of David, it's literally, the Bible is following this specific genetic line that is a carrier for something that I like to call chimeral cell syndrome. Now, do you know what a chimeral cell is?
Alexandros, could I pause you for 1 sec? We have a caller waiting on the line.
Yeah, man. Let's take it.
Caller, are you there? Caller? Caller?
Maybe not.
Hey, caller, you there?
I was looking forward to that.
I think he's there. He's just not answering. Hey, caller! I apologize, Alexandros. Please continue. Chimerism.
Yeah. So, chimeral cell. Do you know what a chimeral cell is?
No, actually.
Okay. So there is a very unusual phenomena that occurs. It's natural. It's called chimerism, cell chimerism. And if you understand a little bit about the birth situation, right, when a cell is being formed and it starts to divide, right, via a special kind of mitosis, right, there is a situation that can occur. It's very rare, and it's based in a gene, a carrier between the filial cells that allow twins to occur, right? And out of those twins, there is a possibility of that twin absorbing the other one and literally having 2 sets of genetic code in that one human being. And that's called chimerism. Now, I believe that there's actually a marker that is a carrier for a special kind of chimerism, and it can be traced.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like a recessive gene trait. And basically what this does is it turns regular people into King Solomons. So like it's like
I haven't put anything in anything. I just finished it. Yep.
Hey Todd, can you hear me?
Go ahead, baby.
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. The caller's on the air.
Todd. Todd! Shit, man. You're screwing up my broadcast. Answer me. I apologize, Alexandros.
Where?
Outside.
I wasn't outside.
He was. No.
How'd he get out
I
there?
don't know. The door was only partially closed.
Anyways. I didn't mean to leave him out there, and I wasn't out there.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. My Skype just
No, it's
updated,
okay.
and I cannot figure out how to get him off the line.
So chimerism, right? So we're looking for this carrier gene that may or may not exist, right? This Jesus gene that gives
Call
birth to
has
a
been
child.
forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 83153741776 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm so
I don't know,
sorry.
it's like double dialed or something.
Yeah,
It's
I
weird.
was trying to hang up on the caller, and I just kept making it worse because of my Skype. It's just, it updated, and it's all confusing now. I do apologize. Oh, here we go again. Okay, let's see if this will work. Oh, boy. Oh, God. Okay, here, let me try one more time. I will call him back. Let's see if I can't get this to work. Oh, my God, these technical issues. Let's see. Okay, it should be done.
You know, I thought technology was supposed to be convenient, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just can't seem to get my buddy Todd on the line. Hello, Todd, are you there? Hey, buddy, you there?
Hello.
There you are.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I've been trying to call for the last 5 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I just enjoyed the program and sound like a very intellectual individual.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Your kind words humble.
Daniel has a very long line of guests that would just blow your mind. You're right up there. You're right up there.
Mm-hmm.
Have you do you know about Adam Kokesh?
I've heard the name, yes.
He's a Marine. He's running for president next year in the Libertarian Party.
Oh, I'm running for president myself, actually.
Oh, so you're going to go up against Adam Kokesh?
I didn't know that he was running. It's good to know.
Oh.
I'm worried about Andy Santiago. That's who I'm worried about. That's my biggest concern.
You're worried about who? The Santiago?
Andrew D. Basiago is the guy's name.
Where's he? Who's he?
So he's, have you ever heard of the Philadelphia experiment?
Yes.
You ever hear of the, I think it's called Project Rainbow that occurred, it was the mind control experiments, time travel
Project Rainbow, not Project Rainbow, but yeah, I'm aware of mind control experiments.
Yeah, so this guy, Andrew D. Basiago, has written a novel where he talks about his experiences, and he's even gone on the Jesse Ventura show, and there's people that believe him. He's an evangelistic Jesus type, like a false prophet.
I can't stand those dudes.
Yeah,
I can't stand one more minute of those dudes.
Well, like go on the internet and go to his website. It's Andy 2020, right? And you look at his website, and it's like all these promises that he's making is about disclosure. It's about, hey, I'm going to reveal all this. I'm going to reveal all this, and that's really his whole platform. Is that he's going to be?
I can't stand one more guy yelling, "Jesus is the way," and follow me. Can't take it. It's overload. You can find it everywhere. It's like an electronic transmission that's being just like spread out. That's how they're selling whatever they're selling.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
because they know it'll work. They know that there's enough people that believe it that they'll latch on, and they're going to mislead all these people. I mean, it's the same with the music industry. It's the same with Hollywood. People are going to wake up and they're going to walk away one day. They're just going to stop. And I'm personally.
You know what's funny? pardon me, because I didn't catch your name.
You can just call me Alexandrous Filth for short.
Alexandros Filth. And I've only heard that 4 times in the last hour. 2 hours I've been listening to the show, but I forgot it. I'm drinking some Oregon lager, so pardon me.
Oh, no, I could definitely tell, man. It sounds like you're having a good time.
Yeah, whenever Daniel has a show, I buy, I do Budweiser, but on occasion I'll grab like something from the liquor store, because in Utah you have to get real liquor from the liquor store.
Yeah, it's like that in Virginia too.
Yeah, the Mormons control the state, and then they control the liquor stores, and you can. No, I don't even want to tell you. It's not even worth it. It's
Todd, do you have any more questions for my guest?
Oh no, I just thought the show was so good, and you're so smart. Listen, I can't remember your name.
Okay,
Antonio?
Todd.
Mr. Filth will.
If you're that messed up, buddy, you should probably call back another day.
It's not that bad, Daniel. No, it's an incredible show. Appreciate your time.
It's a lot to take in, I know. I spit a lot of information really quickly.
So do I. That's why I was calling. There's a little clique that runs it, right?
Little place that runs what?
A little clique that runs the world.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, we know that they're an organized group. We don't necessarily know exactly who they are. We know who some of their organizers and their close bedfellows are. You know, the Rothschilds and the World Bank banking dynasty.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
part
the
of it.
Rothschilds.
Yeah, but they have organized groups, that are like the little mafias. For example, the cartel, while they may not realize it, okay, they're the unwitting bedfellows of the Cabal, and they're doing the Cabal's bidding. And that goes for any organized crime organization in the world. Some of them know who they're working for, and other ones don't.
Totally. And I just got to back you up on a few points, man. You're dead on. You're dead on all that. They've got AI systems, algorithms running. The largest corporations in the world control all the information that you say every day, all day long. They've already set the one world government up.
Yep.
So incredible guest, Daniel. He's very smart, and glad to have you on our side, because we're all out here trying to figure it out too, and love Daniel's show, and incredible guest, Daniel.
All right,
so
buddy.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Todd.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
That was good.
Yeah. My buddy Todd, he's probably had a few too many beers.
Drink and be merry. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely. Why don't we go ahead and move on? I did want to talk to you a little bit about, you touched on this earlier, but I wanted to find out a little bit about Moses or Akhenaten.
Before we took on the caller, we were talking about chimeral cells.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was about to circle back to that, but I wasn't sure how far along we got there. Yeah, go ahead.
So think about like a container in a container, okay? It's so funny because I'm working on AI, and he even touched on it, when he was speaking about their AI systems. It's, part of the software that I'm writing. And it's so weird because I keep circling around this drain. And really, that's what our genetics are. It's like this universal construction language that can be used to create anything. And it's chemistry. It's the philosopher's stone, the Cabal is looking for it too, that they can use to make themselves immortal. They can change their own genetic code at will. They can do it with the power of the mind. They can create a virtual simulation that allows us to do that. All their goals wrap around this same central idea. And that's one of the reasons why our organization is working towards the goals that it is, because we want to prevent people from getting, the bad people from getting their hands on this technology, this incredible, amazing technology of mind, and manipulating it and using it for evil, terrible things. But going back to talking about Jesus, is Jesus really, why am I talking about chimerism and chimeral cells? Okay. So let's look at the line of David. Let's go follow it all the way back to Jacob, let's say, for example. Who did Jacob wrestle with? It's so funny because you look this up in the original language. You look it up in the original Hebrew, and you look it up in Phoenician, and it literally is dancing around this. Who is Jacob wrestling with? He was wrestling with himself. He was wrestling with the Son of Man. Who's the Son of Man? Genetic code. It's our genetics. So inside of a chimeral person, okay, let's say, like a dual personality, if you will, okay? And so that they're literally fighting with their own genetics. Some of his genetics are going to be like a twin, okay? Like a twin fighting with its parasitic self, right? And taking all the best stuff from it in the same way that Jacob was wrestling with himself. And he was the carrier of this gene. And so it followed his matrilineal or his patrilineal line. And that's how Mary ended up with it. So Mary gave birth, okay, and this is the crazy part, gave birth to her own twin, her own absorbed twin. And that would be a real medical miracle. And believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, it is scientifically plausible, 100%.
Yeah, that's a fascinating take.
So, do I believe in Jesus? I believe that it is up to each individual person to seek the truth. That's what I believe. And I'm not going to try to convince you one way or the other. I think you should do your own research, and you should read, and you should think about it. Give it a lot of thought, because the book is there for a good reason. It's meant to make us think, and we're supposed to. We've been designed to think. My personal belief. But going back to Moses and Akhenaten. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. Okay, before Jesus, there is a civilization that came along after the Tower of Babel. Okay, after the Great Flood, right? They covered the earth, or cataclysm, if you want to call it a cataclysm. It doesn't have to be a flood. It could be anything. We do know historically it happened. This is scientifically irrefutable. Everybody will tell you, yep, there was a big die-off. It happened. A bunch of humans died too, no matter what it was. And after that die-off, humankind started to congregate again, right? That's what we do. We start organizing. So how do we organize? Well, we organize using a language. And that language was new. It was something different. And it evolved in very different ways over the generations, didn't it? Even though it came from a common mother tongue. We can recognize that scientifically and mathematically as well, that all these languages have this common thread, right? So if you think about a control system, programming, just like programming a computer with a language, okay, humans are like a kind of computer. And so we took the kids, right, all of these traditions. It's not just the language itself, but the traditions that came with it that allowed us to create these organized societies. And so these were a little bit of leftover bits from, the farmers and the people that actually survived this great cataclysm and what they passed on to their progeny. So you get to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians are resettling this area after the cataclysm that was once already settled by probably an extremely advanced civilization, if I can make even a close guess, during the Babel period. And so when they resettled in this area, of course, it worked out really well because the machines were still working. They still operated to some degree, and they made things work properly. That's the reason why the Nile flows the opposite direction, because the pyramid itself is a kind of machine. It's performing a function, and it still is. It still works to a very much lesser degree than it once did. But when it failed, it actually caused a snapback in nature. And Akhenaten was smart enough, okay, to realize what was going on. Now, how did he come to this conclusion? I believe personally that through studying the information at the library, because he was born very, very differently. He was not the official son of Pharaoh. He was adopted, which is true of Akhenaten, right? He wasn't the true son of Pharaoh, but he was considered the family of Pharaoh. He might as well have been the son for all intents and purposes. So the same expectations, because he doesn't have to worry about ascending to the throne, the same expectations are not placed on our friend Akhenaten Moses that they would have been placed on the prince Thutmose that would have been ascending to the throne. So his education is going to be very different. And so Moses, Akhenaten, had an opportunity to travel and see the world like Solomon and gain all this knowledge and wisdom. And because he had a basis in education, it gave him a huge leg up over all these slaves So think of the slaves in Egypt, the Jewish slaves, as organized monkeys. I know it's a terrible thing to say, but realistically, that's what human slaves are. When they've been bred generation after generation to not be educated, to just know enough to get by in their own language, just so they can do enough business so that they can know what to be told to do, and then they go do it, right? And of course, they've got a bed to go home to every single day. They don't know any different lifestyle, so they don't complain. They get 3 hots and a cot, even though it's not as much as their Egyptian brethren. And so, they're just very efficient slave organized robots. They're an organized robot system. And that's essentially what Moses and Akhenaten was opposed to. He saw this and he was like, this isn't right. Human beings are more than this. And I would know. I lived a life. I saw all these things. I learned all these things. So he took that knowledge and he was like, this came from somewhere. And he was trying to put all the pieces together. He realized, okay, this is from what I take from the story. He realized that not only was he of these people, but he had a responsibility, a greater responsibility to save them from their plight. And how would he do that? And so he understood about all these season changes and all the information is that he began to form a plan on how to basically take back and threaten, because you cannot control the weather. But if you have the right information, you can predict the weather. And that's exactly what Moses did. That's what Akhenaten did. He understood the seasons and he saw things that happened before. He learned things about these ancient civilizations and how there would be a snapback in nature because of that cataclysm that they caused, right? Because of their use of this technology. That he would be able to predict this, right? And he's like, guess what? If you don't let my people go, some bad shit's going to go down. And he was able to very, very accurately predict this. He would be compared probably, if you were to look this up, there's a gentleman that grew up in Japan. His name was Abe no Seimei. You can look him up. He was a kind of a prophet, one of those, Jesus types. And so he made all these predictions about the weather and births and all these things. And it was because of his level of knowledge and understanding of how the world operated under normal, natural behavioral phenomena that he was able to make these incredibly accurate predictions and say these things that were very profound. And so Moses Akhenaten was the same kind of intellectual. He saw the world in the same kind of way because that was his education. He wasn't bound by the education that normally would be given by the priest class to the royal class, because there was no need for the royal class to know certain things. So he took this with him. And he also realized that even after he saved the people, that it was going to be a hard road, because they went from something where they had everything provided for them and all they had to do was just do what the Egyptians told them. They get 3 hots and a cot every day, so they're satisfied. Well, now he's dealing with a monkey class, human worker team that he, basically gathers and takes out into the desert. So why do they wander around in the desert for 40 years? You know why? Because he needed to reprogram them for a couple of generations. That's what took him 40 years. He knew that they wouldn't be successful if they couldn't be organized. And the only way to organize everybody is to get them all on the same page and have the first generation, right, and the second generation start already by speaking and knowing the language. And so he united them with one language that he liked, and it happened to be Phoenician. And he's like, I'm just going to kind of redraw it a little bit, and it'll make sense for everybody, and it'll be really easy because it's base 11. It has all these special mathematic properties, which means that the people are going to be smart because they already know mathematics, right, as soon as they learn the language. And it's true because their language is very mathematically sound. It's what do they call it? There's a term for it. Not grammatica. It's on the tip of my tongue and it escapes me. But essentially, it means that their syntax is very mathematically, structurally sound, which is one of the basis of making a good language. And there's these little keys, these little pieces of all the languages that actually came from Babel that we can learn from. But that's another subject for another time. But Akhenaten, that's how he gathered and organized all these people, and that's also how there was able to be a prediction made, right, about certain people of this belief. And because of their behavior, it would be relatively easy to be able to predict certain things that these people were going to do because of the structure of their language, because of their general behavior. And of course, that's why the Bible is so specific about very, very special details about these people. And it tells about their birth dates and who their fathers and their children were and about how long they lived. What are they doing? Hey, guess what, guys? We're talking about genetics, right? So we're looking at the alleles and these traits that are being passed down and we're looking at dominant and recessive genes, right? If you look at their names, they're actually named for their ability, for their capabilities. Check it out. It's a real thing. And so all of this is historical record to teach them about genetics. So what do you think they're doing? They're all getting into genetic research. They're trying to figure out exactly what is the secret to life in the book of life and all this stuff, and whose name is written in the book of life. So like genetics is this whole other sub-feature of language itself in the Bible. And so it's also part of their brainwashing, right? So it's part of their belief system. But there's two ways to look at this coin. There's the way to look at it as a control system, right? And then there's a way to look at it as a way to help mankind. And that is the dichotomy that we're facing right now with the Cabal. Because probably about 50% of the world, if they knew what we're talking about right now, they're going to say, well, look, let's do the right thing. We don't have to do eugenics, right? We can learn about, genetic information, and we can use it to help people and cure cancer and do all these great things. And yes, that's a wonderful thing. But we also have to assess, right, and keep going back to the central theme, whether or not technology will lead to progress or regression. And we're not facing these facts. We're not talking about it. And this is what the Cabal needs. They need us to be divided over these things so that we're much easier to control, and so that they just can kind of slip in, and then they get what they want. Because then we do all their hard research for them. We figure out the keys to heaven, and so then they just sweep in and they steal everything, just like they've done so many times before. But talking about Moses and Akhenaten, so he started this whole civilization of people, and then he made sure that there were instructions that were written to make sure to avoid certain pitfalls in the future. That's really what I believe the Bible is pointing to, and that's probably what we're gonna get real close to discovering after the Vatican finishes archiving everything and putting that into the public domain, because they're not done with that. And once that happens, that's going to be like their disclosure. And it's so much information. Once again, people are going to be researching this stuff. And how long is it going to take human beings to research this? People have to lay eyes on it. They have to write about it. And then it has to be wide enough spread that people are reading about it. And if that's the case, then we're all going to be focused, and all of our attention is going to be on this instead of on what are they doing while we're distracted reading this junk. And so there's a way to move forward and avoid all that, right? And so it means not paying attention to their little scheme, their little get together. And it's okay. There's going to be people that are going to want to research it, and that's fine. That's fantastic. But we don't need 90% of humanity doing that. Certainly not. I think that the most important thing, if you can learn anything from what Moses tried to leave behind, the most important thing for us to focus on is to get off planet. Is to absolutely figure out a way to leave. And, they talk, you want to talk about the rapture, you want to talk about anything of the 144,000, whatever you want to talk about, okay? There's going to be a group of people that are going to be opposed. And however many they are, and once again, it's a prediction. That doesn't mean it's going to be an exact number, right? So he can get pretty close, but he's not going to be able to determine certain things, certain human behaviors, because he's not going to know how things have changed. He doesn't know all the details, right? And it's the same thing with anybody who makes any kind of predictions about the future and the future of human behavior. Even if you have perfect information, the system is still flawed, right? Because there's things that you can't really know that some human is going to do or another. So I believe that whole thing about Akhenaten is like his wisdom, his revelation about everything that he learned as like a wise great king, like a Melchizedek type, a high priest, because essentially that's what he was. That's why he had to have his brother speak for him. Look this up in Exodus, and so he had Aaron do certain things for him because he didn't know how to put his words in such a way that people could understand, because he'd studied the world in a very different way, and he had a lot of information. And he's thinking through all this stuff and trying to figure out how to pass it on in the quickest, most efficient way. And it's very stressful. I feel that I'm in a very similar position because I'm doing these things, but I also have to spend a lot of my time teaching, doing stuff like this. It's very important that I can get this information out in a succinct, beautiful, and understandable way. And I'm going to be doing this a lot. And it's going to be a really important thing that I'm going to have to do probably for the rest of my life. And that means that it takes time away from my ability to do other things, and that's very stressful because I know that there are other important duties that I have to perform. And so in that same way, any leader, you could say it's the Damocles curse. that's in a position like this, like Moses Akhenaten was, that has sufficient knowledge, that responsibility that comes with it is one of the reasons why the candle kind of burns out faster, because it's that stressor. And that stress is driving you to perform, which is a really remarkable thing. It's like a superpower, but at the same time, you can only perform so well for so long, and then eventually you burn out. Or in the example of John von Neumann, he died at 53. Yeah, he was a super genius, and he did all these amazing things, and he made all these huge contributions. But, he burned out quick. Tesla was trying to figure out a way to live a kind of natural life, and be self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and use very little resources, right? And that eventually led him to live, almost emaciated and starving. He was living off of like cream and honey. He believed that those were like perfect foods. It's strange. He wrote about it. And Moses, of course, was working on something very different in the priestly class, talking about fasting and these special behaviors that you would exhibit, a way to sustain the body without degrading the genetic telomeres, which are really the monoatomic elements that are necessary to support and sustain life. It's one of the little secrets about the Bible that kind of leads towards an immortality goal or ability. And so the proof of that, of course, is in the priestly behaviors and the things that are involved with the traditions that he started. All of the stuff with the breastplate, with the different stones. The different stones have different properties. They're made of these different metals. And, of course, they're interacting with gold and other things in the breastplate. So there's some real science behind this stuff. That how would he have known that? Well, of course, that goes back to, okay, he didn't have to learn the same things. He took it upon himself to go out and seek this knowledge, and he was all over the world. And he had the ability, the riches, right, to do it. And, of course, he wasn't expected to ascend to the throne. So all of these things kind of circle back around. They eat back into themselves. But Moses Akhenaten is this incredible, whether he existed or not, another Jesus-type historical figure. And so it's more or less like a myth that holds some important information to tell us about our own future if we don't choose to change. And that's really the central idea behind the Bible. Is it's the message in a bottle isn't just a way to say this is how you restart civilization from scratch and make a successful group of people that can have free will. Or if you look at it the other way, it's saying if you don't do it right, this is going to be the result. There's going to be disastrous consequences. And so there's an in-between too, isn't there? And that's where we're at. We're at a place where we can kind of say, well, wait a minute, we don't accept this reality, either one of them. We can kind of pave our own path. Any possibility exists if you take the real meaning of the Bible, the literal meaning of the Bible, is that any possibility exists, and you can pave your own path to do anything. But you have to be able to motivate the people enough sufficiently to be able to be agreeable. And that's not something that's easy to do. And there's only so much time. If you can pull it off, what it means is that there's going to be a cautionary tale situation. And now that becomes part of that new message in a bottle that goes to the next generation, right? And so that's how you can make things better for the next generation. That's part of that legacy. And that's the real, if you want to say it, the real lesson, the real wisdom behind Moses and Akhenaten and everything that he left behind. And it's really fascinating. The more you study it, the more you get into it, the more it's convincing that you're like, okay, so what is the real origin of origin? Where did language really come from? Who said, ooh, and then decided this is a good idea. Let me pass this on. This is some really cool knowledge right here. And how do I teach it to these other guys so that it means the same thing? And then to say and take that to the next step. I mean, how many generations did it take? How many iterations did it take if it started from ground zero? And how indeed did it start from ground zero? So whether God exists or not, whether Jesus exists or not, there is some incredible, very focused knowledge that has come through this portal that is absolutely unquestionable. And it's not just through the Bible itself, it's through all these religious texts. So, Moses and Akhenaten, obviously, if you take the historical meaning, if that's the case, then of course he did travel to India, right? He probably went to all these different places. He was a fabulously wealthy king, the son of Pharaoh, and he was able to travel and do all these things and learn all these, all this information. There's a whole piece of his life that's just completely missing. It says, okay, here he was born, he was found in a basket, and then of course he was raised as Pharaoh's son. And then he reached a certain age, and it was like, he just got this old.
Alexandros, I hate to cut you off or getting right into the thick of this, but unfortunately I'm running out of time. We'll have to continue this this discussion about Moses at another date.
Oh, yeah. I do apologize. I kind of ramble a little bit.
Oh, no, it's no worries. Well, we've gone well past the 2-hour mark, and I'm having a great time. Normally I wouldn't go that long, but it's been such a great conversation. But I do want to go ahead and open things up one more time, give you a chance to say whatever you'd like to say to my audience out there, and please feel free to follow that up with anything at all that you would like to plug.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that that I love them, and I'm working hard every day. And I'm not doing this to get any kind of recognition or fame or anything like that. The people that are out there that want that kind of public love and affection, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not the reason why I do this. If we don't, we can't do it on our own. It's just not possible. And that's just a logical thought. And that it's not just going to take you and one other person. And that whole truth-seeking thing, you have to face yourself. You have to be able to face fear and understand what it is and how it's affecting your life. And that's like the first step. If you have the ability to face your own fear, then you know that there's other people that are going to be able to do it too, and you're going to find them. You're just going to find each other. It's going to be like a magnetic thing, and just work together. It's not going to be easy. I'll tell you, at every step of the way, it seems like everything's trying to stop us from helping other people, and it seems like it's not lucrative, or there's no reward, for doing the right thing. And just don't give up. Don't give up. Just keep at it. And I know that sounds really sappy and stupid, but that's the best advice I can really give, because I'm struggling through this the same as anybody else is. Lack of money, lack of funds, lack of resources. And, if you want to be successful, you can't do it the same as the Cabal is doing, as everybody else is doing. You have to follow your own heart, and you have to follow those strong morals, and, set an example and be that leader. And that's pretty much, I don't know what else to say.
Would you like to plug your organization one more time?
Yeah, so it's actually called The Lighthouse. You can contact me. It's a special link that goes to Telegram. And that's where we have our think tank. And, I can't wait to receive everybody. It's open to anyone, but it's kind of invitation only, because we want to make sure that we don't invite the wrong kind of people. And it's not so much that it's exclusive that way. It's that, there are some confrontational people and trolls and so on. And so we have to have some kind of control to protect the individuals that are in there, because they're really working hard on very world-changing things. So if you have something that's worth protecting, then you'll have a gateway for it. And we do it a little bit differently. So you can contact me on my Twitter, my Instagram. I have a minds.com account, and I also have a Facebook. And you can contact me on any of those outlets. I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm pretty sure that my friend Ninja Sue's here will leave the information on the podcast so that people can find it. And just contact me, and I'll make sure that you get put up with the organization, and we can do some amazing stuff.
Very cool. Well, Alexandros, I had a great time, and I would definitely like to follow up with you in the future and talk again.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my friend. You have a good night.
You too.
And there we have it. That was Alexandros Filth. What a great discussion. My God, we could have just gone on and on. But there are some things that I want to talk about, and I did work all day, and I am starting to get rather sleepy. So after 2 hours, I had to kind of cut that short. If you want to call that short at all, that's probably longer than our average interview. But I just feel bad because we were right in the thick of it, and I had to kind of pull out there. But it's only because I am just so fatigued. But let's go ahead and take a break, and then we will come right back, and we will hit it hard one more time, baby. There's still quite a bit to talk about. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to go outside and take a little wee, and then I will be back here, ready to light the world on fire. Okay, let's do this. And welcome back to these last days. I do apologize. I just seem to have a lot of mess-ups tonight, a lot of fuck-ups. I don't know what it is, but even from the start of the show, I was having issues with the software, issues with this, issues with that. I do not know what it is. Perhaps I am under some sort of black magic curse tonight, in which case I silently lift the spell. Whoo! There it goes, it's gone. Oh my. Oh God. Oh God of gods. Oh King of kings. Not to mention, there was this big old Skype update, and I could not find the controls. I could not figure out how to get Todd on the line. I could not figure out how to get him off the line when he was being scolded for letting the cat out. I feel so bad. I just could not get that situation under control. I'm going to have to take a closer look at those controls. I notice with a lot of software nowadays, they're hiding the controls. They're making everything more... You kind of have to search for the menus. They're not just there anymore. You have to hover the mouse over a certain spot. That's really annoying. Sometimes the old school way is actually better. Damn, Todd was wasted. Buddy, you were wasted, man. What was your name again? He tells you his name. 15 seconds later. And what was your name again? Oh God. That's when I knew our buddy Todd was just a little too far gone to be asking questions tonight, because he's gonna just keep asking the same question. What was your name again? Oh boy. Oh my. Well, hopefully our buddy Todd has a good sleep tonight, drinks off that buzz, and rises early for the day. I myself, I was working very hard today. I'm very tired. I'm very worn down. My God, what do I have to do to stay healthy? It'd probably help if I ate right and I got enough sleep. But there's always so much to do, and I get so wound up, and I just can't always fall asleep on time, or I wake up too early. Who knows what's going on? Perhaps I'm possessed. These racing thoughts, this perspiration, this inability to rest. Perhaps I'm under some sort of demonic attack. Perhaps it's electronic. Perhaps it's all in my own twisted mind. My own twisted kaleidoscope of a mind. The madness. The madness. Are you ready to step into the madness? I don't recommend it. You might go as crazy as me. Not that I'm crazy, or am I so crazy that I start making sense at some point? I feel like it's probably the last one. Oh, okay, so apparently those cars, the Teslas, the electric cars, the name Tesla is associated with electricity. But the actual guy himself, Tesla, he is not alive anymore, so I'm not sure why those cars are named Tesla. I really doubt that. I believe it's supposed to refer to a unit of measurement, a Tesla. Let's see, let's look that up. You kind of see where I'm going with this, though? I mean, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything. That probably wouldn't be the best idea. But doesn't it seem kind of strange, the Tesla? Elon Muskrat? Doesn't it seem kind of strange? I don't know. I just think that if you're going to name something after somebody, that you should probably have their permission. Or maybe they did have permission. I don't know. I don't see how they would. Didn't Tesla get, murdered and all of his work stolen? Isn't that kind of continuing the trend? Just a thought, just an opinion. Once again, I don't really know how it all came together. Don't sue me. I don't know. I just don't trust these rich people. They'll just sue you. Just to F with you. Just to fuck with your mind. Especially when they're puppets acting out a game on the world stage. Fake billionaires. Actors. pretending to be billionaires. Pretty strange world we live in. Oh, mosquito. Oh, he's still alive. Fat one. He caught a bunch of my blood. There's this woman. She's a publicist. She tweets a lot. Her name's Sharika Soul. She lives in Los Angeles. Apparently she was abused as a child. She was abused by adopted parents that I believe were not very nice people. She was on Twitter saying that they abused her, that they were, that they're this and that. And the next day, all of a sudden, somebody's posting from her Twitter account and saying that she had attempted suicide. Very disturbing. Obviously, this poor woman went through some horrible child abuse and is just unable to cope with it. I mean, she's speaking out on Twitter. She's trying to help people. And one day she just can't take it anymore. And she actually swallows a bunch of pills, whatever. It was very sad. Like, I was watching this woman. I was watching her tweets. And, because I follow that mass pedophilia, Pizzagate, pedogate type of stuff. And this is all conspiracy theory, of course, but what's funny is that, it's not funny, but what's interesting is that she was just going on and on and on every day, then all of a sudden she's in the hospital because she had attempted suicide. It just feels very dampening and saddening because you're kind of used to seeing that person, and even though you don't know them, to all of a sudden see that somebody who seems to have money, they're attractive, etc., all of a sudden they would attempt suicide. It's like, man, it really shows you how much this pedophilia shows you how it affects people, and it shows you how it can mess a person up and make them unhappy for the rest of their life. Because whatever happened to them was just so effed up. There's just no coping with it, and it happened at such an early age. Very disturbing, very disturbing. But shout out to Sharika, and good luck to you getting better and fighting the good fight, taking down these sickos, these damn pederasts, these Luciferian pederasts. Some people thought that maybe somebody was trying to take her out or they took her out. But that wasn't the case, thank goodness. Got a little paranoid there myself. I was like, oh shit. Who's next? Is it me? By the way, let's see. Let me check that. August 15th, I'm going to be interviewed on this show. I'm going to be interviewed by my buddy Masato Toys, who's appeared on this program before. Runs a pretty interesting website / forum community. And he's going to interview me, and I'm going to actually be the interviewee on this show. So he's going to turn the tables on me. Something different, something interesting, hopefully. Hardcore fans of the show will probably enjoy it. Casuals will be like, who's this idiot? He crazy. Who's this moron? Talking about flat earth. I'll shove a flat earth up his asshole. Flat earth. Fuck this guy, this foil hat wearing fucking piece of shit from Seattle. He's probably some goddamn liberal from Seattle. Fuck the Seahawks. Fucking douchebag, Daniel. Thinks it's the goddamn end of the world. It ain't the damn end of the world. It's the end of his world. I'm gonna shove that goddamn flat earth up his ass. Fuck him. I have no idea what the hell I was doing that for. I'm so sorry. I guess that was a hypothetical person that just found the program one day. What might be going through their head? Very similar to some of the negative feedback I'll get on social media sometimes. Oh, let's see. What are some of the favorite terms that people refer to me as? Idiot, foil hat, moron, dumbass, conspiratard. What are some other ones? Oh, some people, they find my whole thing to be a little depressing. You're bringing me down, man. Why do you want everybody to think it's the end of the world? I don't want everybody to think it's the end of the world. It is the end of the world. What do you think? I'm fronting? Think I'm joking with you? Think I'm making things up? You think this is a gimmick? No. Y'all need to get woke. Hashtag woke. It is time for some truth. Hashtag truth. It's time to get woke. It's time for some truth, because let me tell you, you got to know how to interpret the signs. Did you all see that blood moon the other night? Mm-hmm. Blood moon. End of days. Everybody gonna die. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people gonna die. Pestilence, the four horsemen, Project Bluebeam, the Luciferian alien deception. Oh yeah, the Antichrist. Oh yeah, all these things will come to pass. All these things, the Great Tribulation, and the false prophet. All of these things will come to pass. They just gotta play out, just like everything else has played out. What do you think? What do you really think? It's the end of days. Holograms. What can they not fake? How many of these things that we're seeing are holograms? We know the technology that's out there. How can we trust anything that we see in this day and age when everything is made up of light and vibration? With the technology that really exists out there in the backstage reality, where the military industrial complex and the global elite, the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, the Illuminatus, these things combine, and they have this area called the backstage, where all of that technology is. All of that technology. The invisibility cloaks, the laser weapons, the sonic weapons. What else? Anti-gravity technology, life extension, cloning. That's what's really back there. And how do you get back there? I don't know. Go really deep underwater, climb underneath the Denver airport. Oh my God, I feel sorry for you ladies out there. I feel sorry for you, because I had an experience that really showed me the truth. How there's all these, if you're a woman and you are a little bit attractive, you are just going to have so much male attention from guys just being pervy and just making advances and just being very aggressive. I guess I never really understood, because I'm not that type of guy. I'm not the guy making cat calls at women or copping a fill randomly while on the subway. I'm not that type of dude. I'm just not that type of pervy guy. I wouldn't grope a woman or anything like that. But I swear, I had to fend this dude off that was practically getting ready to rape a friend of mine. It was messed up. He just would not stop. She was not giving him any attention. She was not responding to him in any sort of positive way that would affirm him continually to try to talk to her and get closer and closer. It was really disturbing. And I'm not saying that's what he was going to do, but that's pretty much how it was starting to kind of feel at some point. I mean, this guy was very aggressive and harassing. It was harassment, in the least. And like I said, he just would not stop. He was just a perverted motherfucker. And this guy was twice my size. But I would not back down. I just did not let him get to her. I just stood my ground. I got in between. And I suppose I showed a little bit of that Lionheart. A little bit of that Daniel Lionheart. And I rose up and I got in the way. And I'm proud of myself for doing that. But it opened my eyes. It really made me realize that females get treated pretty badly in society still, even in this day and age. And women out there have to be in constant fear of pervy guys grabbing them or having their way with them. And, it's very stressful. Like, if I was a chick, I would want to be like 400 pounds, full of zits, because how else will you fight off the onslaught of these pervo guys? It seems so challenging to me. And I just don't... It was just eye-opening. I guess when you're a guy, you just grow up with all this... I don't even know how to explain it. But you don't really realize how it is. You don't realize that. Because you're so busy trying to get laid. You're so busy trying to get a date that you don't even realize how it feels on the other end of the spectrum when you have all these pervy dudes always eyeing you up and just giving you this attention. And that's why, let me tell you something, that is why some women act so stuck up. It's true. That is why they stuck up. That is why they act stuck up. Because they have to make sure that there's like this aura around them of bitchiness to block all this sort of negative sexual attention. It's true. It's just kind of like a defense mechanism. It's a shield. So when a female is acting that way, I don't even take it seriously. It's just like a shield to fend off these horny bastards. It's just kind of eye-opening. I thought I'd share that. I mean, it's not really hardcore down the conspiracy hole or anything like that. Sorry. I mean, I ventured so far down the rabbit hole, I don't even know what the hell's real anymore. But at some point, you kind of just want to enjoy a sunset or a bunny leaping through the lawn, chewing on a little clover. So cute. You just want to enjoy the simple things in life, and you don't always want to be all like, holy shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many times are you gonna let your hair turn white and say, holy shit, before you start to be like, okay, enough holy shitting. Now, I'm not saying I'm gonna stop going down the rabbit hole. I'm just saying I'm at a point now where I am the damn rabbit hole. And that's scary. Anyways, let's move on. Friend of mine, rape attempt, shriek soul. Oh yeah, talked about Tesla. I grew up poor. I was not gifted with large allowances or bought fancy cars as a youth. I was not some spoiled rich kid growing up with a silver spoon up his ass. Hell no, I was the complete opposite of that. So don't tell me about, we need to do this and that for this and that person. Hell no. We do not need any sort of socialism or communism. Don't tell me that stuff. I worked hard for everything. And you know how I did it? I did it the frickin' democratic way, the capitalist way. I'm not talking about this show. This show's always been non-profit. You haven't heard one damn commercial yet. In what, 6 years? Damn straight. I'm just talking about my life in general, you know. Just busting my ass the American way, the American badass way. Dan, the real American man. I busted my butt. I worked for every small little nothing that I don't have. I worked hard for it. And I am not going to be told that we need to change to a socialist system where everybody is just given free shit for being a useless sack of shit. You're crazy if you think I'm ever going to go for that. You're out of your damn mind. I had to kick, scratch, and claw my way out of that state, out of that poverty. And I know how hard it is. But you will damn sure never tell me that I don't deserve it because I worked for it. And you're damn sure never tell me that people that don't deserve it and didn't work for it should get anything. Fuck handouts. Fuck that shit. I'm not saying we shouldn't have programs for poor people or the homeless to get them back on track. But as far as democratic socialism, I remember 15, 20 years ago, if you even uttered the word socialism, they'd grab your butt and toss you out of the country, and no one would ever hear from you in the political world again. Never. But now what do you see all over social media? Oh, social media, socialism. Suppose I didn't make that connection yet. What do you see? Socialism this, socialism that. It's just communism. Call it what it is. Oh, communism is a dirty word. So is the whole thing is a dirty word. It's all from Karl Marx. A moron. Marxy the moron. I could care less about manifestos that have to do with Karl Marx. I don't care. I'm an American. And if you want that, what the fuck are you doing in this country? Don't you get that this is not a communist country? Why would you be here? Go live in China, where you can be as communist or socialist as you want to be. And you can have one baby. And you can never say anything bad about the government. Why don't you go do that? Why don't you go to China? Hell no. No socialism. No. They're just pushing this crap on the kids. They're making it like, oh, socialism is where everybody is equal and happy. This is going to turn the world into heaven. No, it's not. It's going to turn everybody into a bunch of poor people that have to eat rats. It doesn't work. I'm not eating rats. You know what else communism means? It means a bunch of poor people can break into your house and take your bathtub and take your wallet and sleep in your bed and sleep in your robe and walk around in your robe, and there's nothing you can do about it. Just ask Anastasia and the Romanov family how much they like communism or communist uprisings or getting killed. Yeah, exactly. Point taken, right? Exactly. Sorry, I just felt strongly about that topic. Figured I'd go on about it a bit. But to circle back to what I was talking about earlier, you got to read the signs. You got to look at the signs. So blood moon, sign. The money, the currency turning into a cashless society. Everything being on a credit card or a microchip or on your phone or whatever. Bitcoin and all that. Paperless, cashless society. That's another sign. War. That's another sign. The environment. The wells dying. The rainforest being depleted. How can anybody argue against that? Okay, yeah, I'm crazy because I think it's the end of days. No, you idiots. Look at the world around you. It's dying. You fools. The forests are disappearing. Species die every day. The ozone is depleted. Or the firmament, whatever it is. It's depleted. This world is dying. It doesn't matter what you believe in. This is the end of days, period. That's a fact. Pessimistic? The world's dying. I don't think this is a matter of perspective. This is a hardcore fact. Where are the fish? Where are the goddamn fish? If you're going to tell me it's not the end of days, where are the fish? Where are the fish? Where are the orcas? Do you know what an oil spill does to a local ecology? I'll tell you, they all die. And nobody gives a shit about the environment, do they? No, we just want to talk about ghosts and goblins and UFOs and unicorns because they're pretty. They're pretty. I'm gonna listen to some ghosts and goblins and some vampires and some Frankensteins and some witches. Daniel, do you still have psychic powers? Daniel, do you still have psychic powers? Can you read my mind? Daniel, is reincarnation real? I'm just kidding. I don't even know what the hell that was. I'm sorry. Daniel. Okay, so anyways, you know, that guy that was trying to like practically rape my friend, this guy, he looked like he had some demons in his eyes. There was something weird about that whole situation. The fact that anybody would even act that way in public, that's terrible. I should have shanked him. He would have deserved it. But then I would have had to go to jail. So that was the first potentially possessed person that I ran into recently. I also ran into a second possessed person. This guy was at the Goodwill. You guys know what the Goodwill is, right? Well, I shop at the Goodwill. I'm not afraid to admit it. I love the Goodwill. Find old records, CDs. Find all kinds of cool stuff there. It's just cool to pop in there every once in a while. I know not everybody's into the Goodwill. I get that. But I like the Goodwill. Even though it kind of sucks these days because everything is so overpriced. But anyways, there was this gentleman hanging around the Goodwill parking lot, and he was out of his mind. He was taking his shirt on and off. He was jumping around doing these crazy Irish jigs, like jumping like 4 feet in the air, like this ballet sort of leap. Holy shit, this guy must have been on something. I don't know if he was on meth or bath salt or what, but again, I could see the dark energy. I could see the demons in his eyes. I could see that he was not alone in there. And he was talking to voices. He was like, oh, I hate when they do that. And then he takes off his shirt and he starts rubbing it against his head really fast, like he's overheating. And then he like goes over to this really nice Camaro and he's like pretending like he's taking a picture with his hand. Like he forms a little triangle, like a little Illuminati DDP triangle. And he's like looking at the car, and then all of a sudden he notices that he can turn it into a heart. And then he flips it around and he's like looking through the heart at the car. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's crazy. This guy's fucked in the head. And then he goes over to oh no, actually what happens next is he walks by me and he goes, hey bro, you got an extra cigarette? Like all of a sudden he was normal for a second. But I knew what was going on. That was some kind of trap to get me sucked into his crazy demon world. So then he goes up to this pole and he starts like whacking it with a belt. Like he takes his belt off. He takes his shirt off again. Then he takes his belt off and he's like whacking it. Then he's acting like he's going to pull his pants off. And then it's like he's thinking for a second. He changes his mind and he keeps his pants on. Then he acts like he's going to pull them down again. I mean, this guy had some personal problems, to say the least. I could have called the police, but what's the point? He seemed to be only bothering himself and whatever spirits he was involved with. And you know how it goes. Why are you calling us? He's not hurting anybody. Why are you calling us? We don't got time for that. Why are you calling us? Because there's this freaking guy that's out of his mind. He deserves to be in a padded room so he doesn't hurt himself or somebody else. There's no money for that. We don't got time for that. Our officers are busy. Be that type of 911 call. But look, people, you have to watch out for that. You have to watch out for stuff like that. Because there are literally demons that will worm their way into your mind, and they will use whatever whatever weakness they can find, like whatever Achilles heel that you have. And even if you figure that out and you overcome it, they'll have something else waiting for you, like ready. So you have to really keep your vibration up and keep these things from getting inside of your mind. That's the only way that you can do it. I do have a... Let's see here. I do have a news story. Give me one moment. Oh, I'm so organized today. Okay. This is from usatoday.com. Ooh, legit. Teen ripped out relative's eyes with his bare hands, police say. Teen ripped out relative's eyes with his bare hands, police say. Holy crap, I'm horrified already. A 74-year-old man's eyes were gouged out during a Friday's... Oh, man. This is messed up. He's missing both... Oh, God, I'm going to puke. He was missing both eyes and multiple teeth. Mahad Aziz, an 18-year-old relative of the victim, was charged in connection with the assault, the publication reports. He only used his hands. Oh my God, I'm gonna puke. I'm so sorry. I just froze up there. Oh wow, such horror. Oh my God, such horror. Oh God. Why would he do that? I mean, the guy's 74. He's gonna die anyways. Why is that necessary? The guy must have been possessed. I mean, speaking of demons. And I know that demon is a dirty word. It's the D word. Hey girl, you want some vitamin D? You want some of this D? You want some of this demon? I know demon is a dirty word because it makes people scared. They get all mad. Oh, this is stupid. I don't believe that. There's no such thing. Oh yeah. Maybe that's what makes you feel better, to not believe there's any such thing, when deep down you know that there is. And you know that they're around every corner. Well, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. There are spirits around us, and they are thick as flies. You better believe that. It's just reality, but the true reality, not the fake reality that most people believe. Not the bullshit fake reality. I'm talking about the real reality, because I only care about what is real. Speaking of Israel, I heard that they killed a bunch of children in Gaza again, as per usual. I think they're up to 20 kids a week, killing 50 kids a week, killing 50 Palestinian people a week, something like that. They're bulldozing their homes and beating them up and shooting them, imprisoning them. Very cool, guys. It's really nice of you. You are just being very nice to those people. You are so heroic. Beating up the old farmer, beating up that old farmer that's taking care of his sheep. Take care of that terrorist. Because this is war, and we have to take these terrorists seriously, so we gotta beat the shit out of these old people and kids and kill them and imprison them because they're terrorists, right? Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense, guys. How much money do we give them? And how many weapons? So they can do that? Y'all are asleep. Sleep. Sleeping. Sleeping. You are getting sleepy. You are already asleep, I mean. What's going on? Why doesn't the news talk about this? Kind of strange, huh? You want some sort of evidence that there is mind control out there? What about that? It's sad, disgusting, and very real. It is real. I love Jewish people. I'm Jewish, by the way. I'm not talking anything bad about Jewish people or Judaism. I'm only talking about Zionism, which is a political movement. There are many Jewish people like myself that are against Zionism. If I believe in the God of Abraham, then I am a Jew. I'm going to make some shekels. This is a horrible Jewish accent. Some shekels. That sucks. That needs to work. I'm sorry. You notice how it's so weird nowadays. Like, you have people that they grew up religious and they hate religion, and if you say like God or Jesus to them, they really get angry. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have like these people that push religion to make money, or they just say weird things and they act like broken records, and they get mad if you don't agree with them about this specific detail, and their way is the true way. And if you don't say that Jesus is God, or you say he's the Son of God, you don't say that he is God, they get mad at you. Or if one guy got mad because he said that I applied something, like I said that you should ask what you can do to do God's work, and instead of like asking what God can do for you. And this guy was mad. He goes, "That's not part of Scripture. Find that in Scripture." I'm like, "What? That was a nice thing to say. Why are you so mad about that?" And that's type of stuff, it turns people off. It really does. It makes you just want to throw it all out and be like, okay, fuck this shit. These people are idiots. And it just kind of ruins spirituality for people, because they end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But I just consider Jesus and Christ stuff and God stuff, I just consider that a part of spirituality, and it's their collection of spiritual lessons. Like the Old Testament and the New Testament, those are just concepts and spiritual wisdom. I don't take it seriously. I don't think that the Bible has powers, like I can hold up a Bible and cast out demons. I'll throw the Bible at a group of shadow beings like a grenade. They'll all explode. They'll all disintegrate. I know it doesn't work like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I just noticed that there seems to be those types, and everybody else is kind of in the middle, and they don't really know what to believe. I mean, you have these different packages that you could prescribe to. You can kind of try them on and try them out. And once you really realize that it is all just perspective, once you realize that reality is completely arbitrary, you just stop caring so much about, being part of this group or that group. And you just take things for what they are. There's truth and falseness in everything. There's deception everywhere. And there's also truth somewhere buried underneath it. And I don't pretend like I know the exact truth out there. I suppose that a very skeptical, pure science person would say, rah, 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 blah, 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 blah. But are those people very happy? Those atheistic, skeptical people, they don't seem very happy to me. They always seem very angry. And they just want to kind of express that anger. Maybe because they don't have any sort of spirituality. I think that believing that the world is basically good and the basic forces behind the universe are good, I think there's a tremendous power in that. It gives you a type of confidence in everything that you do. It gives you strength, like that 12-step program that's all about drawing strength from just acknowledging that there is some sort of creator or you are a created being. I think that whether you believe in Zeus or whatever, if you believe that you were created, it's much different than believing that you were pooped out by a monkey one day and you became human. I don't particularly care for that origin story. Oh, let's see, what else do we have here? Well, I guess that's everything, guys. Somehow I covered it all. I stayed on air. This is a shorter show, about 3.5 hours, but boy, am I tired. I am one tired guy. So, don't fret. We will be back next week. There is an exciting show planned with Karen Patrick. We'll be talking to her, talking about her upcoming conference, and she's actually very experienced in the paranormal UFO world. She has her own broadcast, I believe, although I have not heard it yet. But I will check it out for sure. And other than that, I love you guys. And I love the way that you guys out there support this program. And you don't care how crazy or zany or sloppy or not sloppy it gets. You just keep listening to all the little kinks. Because you know that this show is pure magic. And you know that Daniel is your captain of this ship that we ride on in this journey into the night. Within this ship's walls, you are truly safe, for its shell is indestructible, and you may slumber in eternal peace as we fly through this galaxy. If space is even real, I mean, maybe we have to go into another dimension or something, or just settle on the Earth and just keep going. Right? Because if the Earth is flat, then we just keep going. We can just keep walking in one direction, and eventually we just keep going. And who knows what is out there? Perhaps other civilizations, people from other little flat Earth bubbles, or not bubbles, but little lily pads. And there's different little civilizations in each one, and they all have different types of technology. And everybody is different in them, each world. Like, some people are like lizard people, and some people are spider people. That'd be pretty gross. But who really knows? I mean, maybe the Earth is round. Maybe I'm just completely fooling myself, and the Earth was never flat. Or maybe it was always flat. And a round Earth is completely ridiculous, and they are just tricking us all. Perhaps that is the truth. How will we ever really know? What I can say for sure is reality isn't what it seems. Reality is arbitrary. I suppose that would be the most truest thing to say. Yet we all seem to share some sort of objective truth together. I suppose maybe you could say the truth is out there, like the X-Files. It just seems like the more deeper you dig, the more confusing things get, and the darker things get. And the more you just realize that having some kind of faith is the best way. And if that means just having some faith that the basic forces behind the universe are good, then hey, I think that's good enough. I'll see you next time, everybody. Good night.
Fuck yeah.